All right, so we're going to try to call the meeting to order now that we have the commissioners attending that I know will be here this evening. So welcome to the Thursday, September 7th meeting of the Planning and Transportation Commission. Please turn off all your noisy devices. And let's see. We have, let the minutes show that we have 6 of 7 commissioners here, and Commissioner Samek is absent tonight, and the rest of us are all here, hoping that Commissioner Enender makes it through the meeting. She is sick. If she falls over, we will administer first aid. She assures us she's not contagious. Yes, exactly. Okay.
You'll know when you hear me talk.
Yeah. That deep voice. Okay, so at this point, I want to ask if there's any comment on items that we're not already covering on the agenda tonight. I have speaker cards, but they all seem to be on the Loyola Corners item. Is that that's on Loyola Corners as well? Okay. All right. So in that case, we will go ahead and close public comment on items not on the agenda. And we will move forward to the consent calendar, the only item of which is our minutes of the meeting that never ended, the August 17th Planning and Transportation Commission meeting. So does anyone have any comments to
I have
those
a
minutes?
question. I wasn't here at the meeting.
Just watch the tape.
But there, item 1, it says that the commission voted 401 and Samek was arrived at the meeting. Did what happened during the meeting? I didn't watch the thing because he voted. So shouldn't it be before the action?
Yes, it was before the action, and the action was actually 5 voted in favor. There was no comma between Enender and Meadows, and we are different individuals. So,
Yeah, I'm just was
so
reading through all the things. And
so thank you for
doesn't make
catching
sense.
that. Are there other comments on the minutes? All right. Any motion?
I move to approve the minutes with the corrections just made.
Any second? Second. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And do we have an abstention?
Yes, I abstained because I wasn't at the meeting.
And we have no nays, and we have 1 absent. Thank you. Okay, so moving forward, we're going to open the public hearing, and I am again going to express appreciation and apologies for all of you who were here 3 weeks ago when we thought we were going to be doing this. So thank you for coming again, and my apologies that you spent your evening with us instead of with your family or other things that you could have been doing. So this then is the, oh wait, actually there's something I want to do first. I forgot. I apologize. We have a quick informational item, and we want to move that forward because when we discuss the item that we will be taking the bulk of the time and on, Commissioner Bodner has to recuse herself from Loyola Corners, so we want to take the quick item first, which is the Hillview Community Task Force update, which Mr. Cornfield will give us. We'll wrap that up quickly, and then the rest of it is up to all of you. So let's have that task force update. Thank you.
Meadows. This item is informational, and it's an opportunity, an early opportunity for this commission to provide some input to the Community Center Task Force. As a matter of background, council's developed a task force for the Community Center project, and as part of their outreach, they're asking all the commissions to provide input on recommendations on how the council might consider interior space allocations and exterior design. And later on this month, on the 26th, the council will have a study session. And the goal tonight is to look at, within your area of responsibility, are there considerations that you think that the Hillview Community Center Task Force would like to know now? And so this is your opportunity to discuss that, and we will report that to the city's information manager, and then that will go through the process. Now, just for your own understanding, once the project is more developed, it will come back to this commission formally with our normal design review process. So what was given to you was really the background about the programming, the timeline, and I think the vision summary there. So with that, I'd be happy to answer your questions or take your input.
Do we have any questions for staff?
I have questions, but it has to do with the vision summary, and I don't know if staff can answer those questions, or that's just for me to note my comments.
Well, we're not even discussing that on the agenda tonight. I mean, this is...
But it's part of the packet. So I had some questions regarding this, which... Yeah. So, all right, so my first question is the experience. It says, last sentence, or the second line says, that will serve your public. Who's your?
Our.
I would assume it would be the citizens of Los Altos.
Well, it just says your, and the other comment I have is that a vision summary, I always put in the present tense, not the future tense, because it's a vision. So services are safe, environments support, and configured, and also all the wills and will be's I would remove. That was just my comment of reading all this stuff and trying to understand what was being asked. But as far as the rest of it, as far as the vision of what the center is going to be and everything else from the planning standpoint, I don't have any comments.
Okay.
I have a question. In the vision, I thought it was interesting that, and I like that the aspiration to try to come up with a way to configure it to connect with our downtown. Is the intention to actually find a way to physically connect the space, or just in spirit have them connected? What are they talking about? So I know I've seen some images in the downtown visioning of some
Ridges.
physical connection between. Is that within their bailiwick, or are they talking about something
Well,
else?
I think it's really meant to be in the kind of metaphorical sense.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Because you're right, in the vision process, one of the things that we've asked the consultants to do as they're going through the vision process is just show a physical link between the downtown and the civic center, but not over to the community center. I guess in a broader sense it is, but there's no connection really between the two.
I have just a couple. Has there yet been a recommendation or decision at the task force level about whether they're going to go toward one story or two stories, which I know was a question early on?
That decision has not been made yet.
Okay. And what about, are they discussing placement in a way that would allow for ready expansion if at some point we were to want to build an additional building?
I don't know the answer to that, but I think that would be a good comment from the commission to pass along to the commission.
It seems to me that'd be something we might want to do. And then a suggestion would be at some point, and certainly before maybe it would come back here, I would hope that we'd get verification that they've mapped current use into the planned layout so that we know whether all of the current activities can be accommodated in what's being planned, and if not, what's been dropped, or if there's new, what's been added. But I think there ought to be a mapping of activity. I'm thinking about when I designed my kitchen and I had to make sure that every pot would fit a place, including a deep enough drawer. So,
Actually, I have a comment that tags right along with Anita's, which is, I know from the city council meeting that only 80% of the current functions are going to fit in the new building due to budgetary constraints. There's going to be smaller than what's there now. And so my comment is, paralleling Anita's, that it would be good to have a space allocation currently made with time, because some places are used the same space is used for multiple functions at different times of the day. But in addition, the dear to my heart is childcare, and it is the only function that's currently there that has state-imposed exterior space requirements, and they are very unique because they cannot double up with other functions. And so I, as a comment as an individual planning commissioner, feel very strongly that childcare reflects part of the fundamental mission of our town, which is a good place to live and raise a family. If you can't provide affordable childcare in this part of town, you're missing the boat, in my opinion. And therefore, as part of the mapping, it would be very useful to have the required exterior space requirements that are required for licensing either be included or be noted as cannot fit it in, therefore we're choosing not to put that function in.
And I know there's been a number of questions from council over the months about what information was really compiled about current use and how, frankly, inadequate it was when it went to the consultant, to the architect firm, which has now been hired.
Right.
And I think we ought to encourage them to beat on the staff if they have to, and I mean that in the kindest way possible,
Taken
to
in.
make sure that they get the data that they need to do that.
I would also, something that you said about having the foresight to envision what could come at a later date, I think is really important, because there may be the must-haves versus the nice-to-haves. And while there's only a budget of $20 million now, if this is incredibly successful and does what a community center should do, there may be an appetite for investing another 5 or 10 million or more in X number of years to complete the vision, right? And it's not unusual for community centers, and I'm familiar with a community center down the road, there's JCC, where they build what they can and then they expand upon it incrementally as their needs and vision grows.
And as you may know, there was a query through council about possibly doing some fundraising to increase the budget. And what I recall from the last meeting, the basic decision was there's no way we would be able to raise sufficient funds to alter the current planning effort, but which says to me that there's built up interest potentially in doing exactly what you're saying, Randy.
Yeah, so some sort of master plan that maybe phases the project into 1 or 2 phases.
I think you have to be careful not to use the word master plan,
Right.
but you could say something about anticipated phasing for future expansion.
Right, leave room.
I feel like that was part of the discussion somewhere along the line that I heard, but whether it's still explicit or not, I think is a good point. Did you have
No, that's
anything
all.
else, Pahi? And I want to apologize. When you said vision, I was thinking visioning, and so all right. I don't have anything to add. We do have a speaker card on this item. So Roberta.
Well, I have a question from
Oh,
staff,
okay.
as Anita was talking about, and that is zoning. Is this property zoned in some way, and are there requirements that they have to meet, specifically height?
It does have the appropriate zoning and general plan designations, and there will be a formal public review process like a private developer would need to go through, environmental review and so forth. And
Okay.
the planning department is working with the visioning team for this effort, along with other city staff.
Okay.
I wasn't planning on speaking, but since you brought up childcare, I think it's really important that we differentiate between what is going to serve the public overall and what is going to service a small group of people. We do have Tiny Tots, which is a recreational program that does service 2, 3, and 4-year-olds. The Children's Corner is a private school, and the City Council made it really clear on many occasions that they did not want it to be included. I'm concerned about the process that is happening now, where Chris Jordan decided that he was going to go negotiate without the task force with the Children's Corner and see what he could come up with. That process is not a normal process. Usually, if there's a policy question, if we're going to do something or not do something, it goes before council. So I'm a little bit disturbed about that. I was a teacher. I'm very concerned about our kids in town, but I think it's really important that the task force be able to weigh in, that the community be able to weigh in. I went on Google and typed in preschools near me, and I found 49 of them. So are we going to favor one private school, or what is our policy in the town going to be? And as long as we're talking about space, we'll talk about the needs of the seniors, because Los Altos Mountain View schools run adult education, and many of the classes there are for 55 and older, and that may be a program that's also eliminated. And I do want to make sure that the space that the seniors have now certainly is not, none of it is taken away, and I think that we've seen a good growth in the population of seniors who have been attending. And so I want to, just say, if we're going to talk about daycare, we can talk about senior daycare. I think that there's policies that we need to discuss and not just say, I personally believe in this. I think there's a lot of research that needs to be done and a lot of thinking that needs to be done and a lot of priorities that have to happen, decide what's going to serve the largest number of people in our community first before others, and decide if we want to monetize the Hillview Center or not. Is it for our community or, So I think there's a lot of open questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberta.
I would just like to
Yes.
point out that I said nothing about public or private. What I simply said is a child care facility is very important to me, and I don't care who runs it as long as it's safe and good for our kids.
Yes, so I think I'll just wrap up my impressions, which Roberta brought some of them to mind. Obviously, it's early in the planning, and we do have to look at all the potential uses and prioritize those. But I think I often hear, and we often fall into the trap, well, I don't do this, therefore we don't need that. I mean, I don't play soccer, but I fully support that there's a soccer field at Hillview. So, I mean, as a community, we decide through a prioritization process and research, as you suggested, where those priorities are. And it's not necessarily based on the search of how many soccer fields there are nearby. What do we as a community value? But I just, with that, I think we're probably done with this item. So we will wrap up, and we look forward to hearing more about it as it comes forward. Okay, thank you. So let's move forwards or backwards, depending on how you look at it, to item number 2, and open the public hearing on the Loyola Corners update. And
Before you do that, I'm going to recuse myself because I own a property in Loyola Corners at 1000 Fremont.
all right,
Thank you for doing that.
thank you. So we will let Commissioner Bodnar head on out. You're not hanging around for the. Oh, you are going to? Oh, okay. Right, okay.
So I have a question for staff, because normally, I noticed the new seating,
Yeah.
and normally there's a place that the next speaker sits that's marked on a chair, and there's no chair that says that. So can we have a place that we designate as the next
The audience
chair
has
so that
designated
we
that
can
spot
move
for
this
us.
along?
Maybe a different color chair for the next
Or maybe
meeting.
something more in line with the.
Maybe the
behind
one in the
podium.
corner.
I think we're okay. I'll give them a heads up, a couple speakers
That's fine.
in
I just
advance.
wanna-
Yes.
Keep the process moving.
All right, so can we have the staff report on Loyola
Yes.
Corners?
We can, and I'm going to give it from the podium. I'm having a problem with our clicker for the PowerPoint, so, sure. Just need to pull it. It's in the tray.
And David, I have a PowerPoint that I'd like to present too, because in regards to the report. Do I give that to you? Do I wait? I don't know when to give this.
After the public speaks, then we discuss it.
Yeah, we can load it up, sure.
Okay, perfect.
toward the bottom. There you go. Okay, thank you for that. So this is the Loyola Corners specific plan update, and this was continued from your previous meeting, and we thank you for your time tonight on it. So what we're talking about here is the Loyola Corners commercial district, and we're talking about the same boundaries that we always have, roughly 17 acres there. Next slide, please. What we last heard was input from the City Council at a study session that we had with them. And their input was as follows. They said we really shouldn't explore methods to incentivize redevelopment there. The council thought we were just taking a little more an aggressive approach than they wanted. They wanted us to strengthen the design standards in the specific plan. We got clear direction to maintain the height and parking requirements. The 30-foot height in the one space for 300 feet. We heard that they may support a modest expansion of residential, but we're not comfortable with a specific density limit, and we were talking anywhere from 15 to 24 units an acre, and we have a modified recommendation there, which I'll explain. The council also thought we should loosen up the permitted land uses there and allow, while we're keeping the first floor along Fremont as a retail-only zone, they felt it might benefit the district if we open up the rest of the corners to office and other permitted uses that wouldn't normally be allowed at the ground floor, so that some of the more difficult retail spaces might be able to be used more effectively. And then finally, they wanted us to refine our circulation requirements based on the circulation report, which was still pending at that time. Next slide, please. So in terms of the design standards, what we've done is looked at there's quite a bit of language in the plan about that. And so what we did was developed a series of topics that we think when we're working with applicants initially, these are the areas we would focus on. And it's really just restating some of the things that are in the plan and try and get these projects off on the right foot. So really stressing informal architecture and incorporating familiar architectural elements where possible. And we're looking at emphasizing small-scale building elements, and what we mean by that are emphasizing the human scale and smaller building forms. We think that the simple and sloping roof forms are important in that district. They visually can tie the structures together, and they help reflect a more residential architecture that seems to be prominent in that area. We really want to look to rustic and natural materials. Wood and cement plasters tends to connotate a small scale, warm, and more of a human quality. Integrating rooftop mechanical equipment, while it is allowed on the roof, we want to be more careful in this district, have it set below roof lines, and avoid locating it on flat roofs that are just screened by parapets. We don't think that's a good approach in this district. We'd like to emphasize retaining that arcade along Fremont Avenue. That's an important architectural design element, and it helps tie the retail buildings together. And then finally, we're bringing in the idea of the streetscape plan, or what it's officially called, Loyola Corners Concept Plan. and in terms of how we treat the sidewalks and street trees and pavement textures. And what we want to do is really address these where we can with projects, but be judicious about it so we don't create a patchwork effect. And a good example of this is on the most recent project approved out there at the former service station. We reoriented the crosswalk a little bit and bulbed out B Street a little bit to help emphasize the pedestrian movements there at that corner. But we didn't take it as so far as to do the decorative paving at that intersection, which we could have done. We felt that would have been a little hopscotch there. Next slide, please. So with regard to height and parking, it's really just emphasize the 30-foot, two-story limit and the one space for 300 square feet for all uses. So that maintains the existing plan in that regard. Next slide, please. Residential potential, the plan now allows 20 dwelling units to be built. There's 8 left. And so what we're thinking is that of adding another 20 units to that, so 28 more units going forward. We think it is important to allow for the second-story residential uses. It's not only does it add vitality, but it helps make other projects financially feasible. And so we think that's something that we want to just allow a modest increase. Next slide. Okay, so retail and other uses, as I mentioned earlier, allow retail and personal services throughout the area, but emphasize that and allow office use at the ground floor, but not along Fremont. You want to try and keep that as a retail. Next slide, please. We've changed some of the specific parcels, and this is a strategy in the plan where it earmarks a certain number of parcels for specific policy language, help guide us when we're looking at development. And so we added a parcel here, a specific parcel for the California Water Service site. And this was really to facilitate keeping them there. We think it's a positive use. They own the former Echo property, and they have their corporation yard there. And they have plans to build a new office building there for their own use and a customer service center, and then redo their corp yard and make that a little more in keeping with the character of the area. And so what we're looking at there is building in that this public or quasi-public land use is a conditional use in that district, so they can ask for a use permit, but we would do the development, the zoning, if you will, in accordance with the commercial neighborhood zoning that underlies this whole area. So there's still the same 2-story, 30-foot height limit with all this consistent setbacks and parking requirements. The other change we're recommending is for the photo drive-up site of the 999 Fremont. And there, what we want to do is just clarify that a more traditional development could be allowed there if it was desired by council, 2-story and a 30-foot height limit, that we would like to see a plaza element at the corner, if feasible, to help tie in whatever's built there with what's going on across A Street along Fremont, and then allow residential or uses or office on the second floor, and then restaurant or retail on the ground floor. So we want to build in that potential for that parcel. Next slide. Okay. So in terms of circulation, what we found was that the existing conditions, there's really 2 problematic intersections. The off-ramps, the on and off-ramp on Loyola operates at E, and which is a very poor level of service with a lot of delays, and that's in the PM peak hour. And in the AM peak, the Fremont-Miramonte Foothill Expressway intersection operates at an E as well, and those are not desirable. And so what we were looking at are all these different improvements, making Fremont two-way, making A Street possibly one-way, relocating the on-ramp to Foothill to coincide with Dolores Avenue, and these kinds of things. And so we studied those in the traffic analysis and found that the existing specific plan development scenario, so if we just do nothing, but allowing for the additional 20 units that we're asking for, would maintain the level of service to D or better. So that meets the city's standard. But most of the other improvements made things worse. And so there is the A Street concept, making that one-way eastbound, is something this plan has looked at. That in some ways does improve the level of service in some regards, but it also creates other problems with the bike and pedestrian flow. And so unless we tackle all of that together, we could do a one-way A Street and have some minor delay increases, but we really would have to address these other things. And so really what the staff has come to is that we're really not recommending any of the circulation changes that are left. We think they're really, unless we want to find that it's to the city's benefit to increase the traffic in that area for other reasons, we're not recommending it at this time. And I just want to point out that while the A Street looks like one-way eastbound might be feasible, it's something that we have heard consistently from the community that uses that street in the morning coming down from the county there. They really aren't desiring a one-way solution there. And so next slide. So this is really just a graphic of the two intersections that are problematic now. In the evening, the on-off ramp on Loyola Drive from Foothill, and then in the AM, it's really the Fremont Miramonte Foothill off ramp that tends to be the problem there. And so all of the circulation changes made those intersections worse, and so we just didn't see that as something we wanted to recommend. So that next slide, that concludes our summary of the recommended changes, and I'd be pleased to answer your questions.
And of course, I have some.
Well,
We missed you, Mike.
yes, go right ahead, please.
So, David, going back to your previous slide. Sorry, John.
Okay, I'll stay right here.
Get back.
So this is the layout of the specific plan as it's written today. And yet you're saying no changes, yet there are changes in this figure. So are you saying that this figure is obsolete?
What we're saying is the circulation changes shown in this figure are problematic.
Right.
And
so you're not saying that this is the way the specific plan should be?
No, he's saying the opposite.
Right, that's what I'm
Right,
saying. I just want to
right.
make sure, because it's not clear when you were doing I was like, okay, A Street is, and the changes on Miramonte, I was just not sure. So you're saying don't change it to be this way?
that's what we're saying.
Okay. The second question I have is that we've gone away from stories for a long time in our zoning, and so yet in this presentation and the material that was provided to me, it says 2 stories, which I continue to say it's 30 feet, regardless of how many stories. If they can put 6 stories in a building, 5 feet apart, that are 30 feet high, great for them. Is that true?
Well, it's not. The specific plan, while the city in general has a form-based zoning we've moved to that gets rid of the number of stories, the specific plan here takes precedence, and it remarks on having a 2-story limit. And so that is interpreted
So my question
as
is
the
the
limit.
Packard building across the way 3 stories or 2 stories?
The Packard Foundation?
Correct, the building at 1 Main Street.
Oh, that's 3 stories. Well, it's 2 stories with a basement.
So is that, yeah, so that's what I'm saying, is it's kind of deceiving to say, if somebody puts something below ground, is that a story?
No.
It's not from a zoning perspective, but you would have to park it. So commercial space down
Right.
in the basement.
So that's why, to me, it's confusing when you say 2 stories because I don't know what a story is.
What we're talking about is above ground 2 stories.
Okay.
So you could do below ground parking or below grade uses.
Okay. And then did this transportation studies thing go before BPAC?
No.
Because there are elements of pedestrian and bicycling that were mentioned in it that they should weigh in at some level. I can say what my concerns are when I have time to comment. And then the other question I had, is there a time frame for the water district moving? Because I noted that it says that we want to allow them to move, but there's no time frame as to, like, if they don't move by a certain time element, then we should, I don't know, it just seems like they've been forever in that office and they bought the other place of the Echo and it doesn't look like they're moving.
Well, they are internally. They're subject to the California Public Utilities Commission.
Right.
And so in order to expand their facility, they have to get a rate increase passed, and it's all for a very specific purpose. And so they are, I think, going to achieve that. They're seeming very positive about it. In fact, they've already started designing a building.
So would it make sense to put like a 10-year, I mean, if you don't move within 10 years, then we're going to change the zoning?
We didn't feel that was important. We
Okay.
thought that Cal Water is they're going to use the property or not. They're not in the business of holding properties, and it's not within their purview. So
Okay.
they would divest themselves. That's why in the language we're saying for the specific parcel language that if they don't develop the site, that it would just revert to the commercial uses
Okay.
normally allowed.
And then my last question is the PM area that's marked here on this slide, that's not our jurisdiction, am I correct? That's the county's jurisdiction.
That intersection is in the county's right-of-way.
Right, so we cannot say what should happen in that. We just note that it's horrible, which it is, but we can't do anything about it. We, the
I
city
mean,
of
we
Los
can
Altos.
work with the
We can make
county
it
and
worse.
improve it.
We can make it worse, but we don't have any jurisdiction over that area.
It's in our. We have jurisdiction. It's just the county. It's in the county's right of way too. So
Gotcha.
we have to be in concert.
Okay.
We're going to make a change.
Thanks. Those were all my questions.
I'm just wondering where you guys arrived at the extra 20 dwelling units. Was that based on some study or?
It was based on our judgment. There was originally a 20-unit limit in the plan. It took a number of years to. It's still not even whittled away. So we felt it was comfortable for us to add another 20, given the way the land uses are laid out. It allow a few units on top of some of the existing buildings.
Okay. But the report from the economic report had suggested how many more?
I think they were thinking more along the lines of 24 units an acre or something like that.
Oh, an acre.
And that was along the lines of what our original thinking was.
Okay.
It's increasing the density to something greater, and so they were responding to that.
Okay.
But this 20 is, what is it again per acre? It's very low.
I haven't
Well, it's
done the
nine-
math.
Did we
but
say it was 19 acres is the whole
Yeah.
It's
property?
17 acres.
17 acres, and we're going to have
Yeah.
48 units? That's,
It's not good, yeah.
yeah. I have a question.
Go right ahead.
And it's mostly a language question, which is in number 5 when it says integrate rooftop mechanical equipment. I think you need to say within the architecture, because integrate is not as accurate a word as we like. There's a very good explanation that follows, which says avoid screening only. We want it integrated with the architecture, but I think do a little wordsmithing on that one would make me a happier candidate.
Thank you. That was our intent. So appreciate that.
These are in no specific order, David. My first question is, since one of the goals that I think we have is to be as fair and transparent both to the community and to potential developers, what's the final package look like? So are you guys intending to take the old plan retype it, put new figures in it, show what got changed, and have a new integrated document that you can give out? Is there going to be just whatever the resolution is, which then takes precedent with the old plan? So if someone comes in as a potential developer, you say, well, here's the old plan, and here's the resolution, and this takes precedent over that, and you figure it out. What's the plan?
The latter. We saw this as leaving the document intact.
Okay.
And implementing the resolution that we're proposing to you.
Okay.
And this is a strategy we've used to revise the plan twice now.
Okay.
And so at least from our staff workings, we're familiar with that. And when we work with applicants, we would highlight that there are some changes to the plan.
Yeah, I have no doubt that you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
I'm more concerned about how easy it is for a developer and for the community to sort out what's the rules. So I hope when you do that revision that you somehow do that in a way that it's not just you sitting across the table from the developer to sort it out for them, but it can be more understandable to the community as well. With respect to height, under the current plan, can developers take advantage of the other height exception that applies in other zones for parapets and screening of things and elevators, one of our elevator shafts, one of our favorite topics? Mm-hmm. Or are they limited by something that's specifically in the plan so that that option is not available?
They're limited the same way all the other commercial districts are.
So they can take advantage of the height exception.
Mm-hmm.
Things like the density bonus would be interesting, right?
No, that's a
That's a
different
different
story.
question.
That's a different story.
We're all
Yeah.
getting to that question.
Yeah. That one comes later. You understand my concern that even though there's the exhortation here to integrate the mechanical equipment architecturally, if there is a height exception that says, yeah, well, we can go 8 feet or 12 feet or whatever and do that, then we're setting ourselves up for a big boo-ha.
Because we have a more specific rule applying to this zone district, rooftop of mechanical.
Yeah, and this is in all of our commercial districts.
This is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did not make
And
note of the
that's been a
section. It's
confusing
14
point.
dot.
If you just read one section out of context, it says within the height limit, mechanical equipment must be screened within the height limit,
Or must be within the height.
within the height limit and screened. And then the very first provision of that code refers to using the general provisions and exceptions.
Right,
So-
which allows you to have the height exception
Yeah.
in order to screen equipment. So
We'll do some verification of that with this.
I think that would be very helpful.
I'm concerned that, we have this very specific provision in the zoning code specific to Loyola Corners. It says rooftop mechanical equipment must be within the height limit and screened architecturally from public view, which to me reads that you don't get the benefit of that exception.
That's why I am asking the
And
question.
so we'll
So,
double check with the
clarification.
city attorney and verify.
So it might want to specifically exclude the section of our code that otherwise allows for height exception, if that's what council were to
Make that clear.
say they wanted to do. The original plan for 20 housing units, and I listened to and attended the city council meetings where they discussed more and the economic analysis and so on. But my basic question is, and I'm going to ask David, you've got the better historic memory here, I think, than Mr. Biggs, just because you've been around longer. And that is there any place in town where we basically doubled the housing density through a zoning change or a plan change? Because that's what we're basically doing. We're saying we wanted 20, now we're going to allow there to be 40. That's doubling. Have we done that any place?
Going from one dwelling an acre to two,
We have
essentially
done-
is what we're doing. And
We've done it in that area near Foothill. where we went to multifamily zoning. I don't know what you
On
call
First
that.
Street.
Yeah.
The First Street commercial, there's no density limit there. So we went from, we increased the height limit to add essentially another floor or two, depending on how you design.
Right.
I
which
was
we're
talking
not-
about the residential area between Foothill and First,
Cuesta?
Cuesta, that area, the Giffen area.
Yeah.
where we went to multifamily when it had been single-family. And now we get 4
That-
units per lot.
That area predates me, so.
Goofy. I should have asked
What I was
Phoebe,
talking about
obviously.
is The zoning changes we made downtown along First Street doubled the residential potential.
Okay. The plan has a number of things that the city was going to do, and you mentioned one in your presentation, streetscape, which is not technically a city thing, but it's something to be done. And I know the original plan also had certain things that the merchants were going to get together and have happen. Are we just going to leave all of that fallow by not talking about it, or do we have any hopes or dreams that any of that is actually going to happen?
I think that's a policy question for the council. And this was set up to have a business improvement district, which was initiated, and it really just didn't thrive. And there were a lot of things that were dependent on that, so.
Okay. And I'm getting close to the end, honest. I think it would be very helpful to know, because in looking at the traffic in the scenario 2, I was trying to put in context, what does that development assume? Does that assume 2 stories everywhere? I mean, it gives an amount of additional square footage in various categories of use, but without, I mean, just saying this takes up 17 acres doesn't really give us any information about how much square footage there is on, usable square footage on the lots or current development square footage that we have. So there's really no way to scale that and say, oh, we're talking about what would amount to, adding 50% or adding 20% or whatever it happens to be. I couldn't find any way to figure that out.
This doesn't add any development potential in terms of floor area.
I'm sorry, the scenario 2 in the circulation specifically calls out additional square footage for office, for...
That's in the plan. It's already built into the plan.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
How does that assume, compared to current reality, current built? Let me try it that way. Compared
let me
to current
state it
built,
this
what
way.
does it do?
There was the plan allows 15,000 square feet of retail and 2,000 square feet of service retail above the first floor, 2,000 square feet of office. Okay? None of that has been built out. In fact, we've gone the other way. We've demolished buildings. There's now 19,000 square feet of retail potential in this plan right now. We take the 15,000, the Echo was removed, some other buildings were removed, and so we're not really moving the needle on potential development here. So what we looked at was, fine, let's just leave that alone, that's already in the plan.
I understand what you're saying. My question is, if scenario 2 is premised on a full build-out of the current plan, how much bigger is all that square footage compared to what we have now? Just as a way
How
of...
undeveloped is this
Yeah,
this area?
essentially, how undeveloped is it compared to what the plan would allow? I would thought it was an easy question, but I'm not doing well here.
The plan allows 19,000 square feet of retail.
And how much retail is there now in Loyola Corners? That's what you're asking.
That's what I'm trying to find out. What do we
It
have now, and
allows-
what does the plan allow us to get
It
to?
allows an additional 19,000 square feet from the point in,
So right now, as of 1990, and we backpedaled from there. There was 44,000 square feet of retail, 8,000 square feet of retail services, 28,000 square feet of office.
And then the plan allowed for an additional,
19,000.
It allowed for an additional 15,000 square feet of retail.
Of retail, yeah.
2,000 square feet of personal service above the above the first floor, and another 2,000 square feet of
office.
office. And so,
But what you're saying is it's a zero-sum game. If we lost some retail, you can add it into the potential that's allowed in the plan, but the total between existing and what's permitted in the plan is not changing. That's a zero-sum.
That's correct.
that's how
The
If I
plan-
did my math right, we're saying that we had, at the date that David cited, about 80,000 square feet of developed use, and the plan allows us to add 19,000.
That's
So
correct.
it's kind of, sort of close to 25%. Kind of, sort of.
Right.
Okay, is that
Well, that amount plus the 20 residential units.
plus whatever residential units?
Yes, and then the additional 20 that we've included in this proposal.
Right, okay. If the water company adds customer service, which I heard you mention, what parking requirement applies?
one parking space for every 300 square feet.
Okay. And if you would go back, please, one, and I'm sorry, John, I think it's one slide on here, to the circulation. Yeah, what confuses me is that the second major point, the existing specific plan development scenario maintained LOS D or better, does that mean except for the two conditions cited above?
They did not change.
So the two conditions cited above stayed the same, and everything else didn't get any worse than LOSD.
That's right.
Okay, I find this a little bit misleading, the way it's written. So maybe it's just me.
In what way? What do you
Because-
think is unclear?
Because existing specific plan development scenario, including additional dwellings, maintained LOSD or better, meeting the general plan standard, when you've just said above that you have two intersections that meet LOSE, which is worse.
So you need to make a note that says, except for the existing two conditions, which are already bad and they're not being made worse.
Right, that are worse than D,
Yeah.
and they don't get any worse.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
We'll clarify that.
Thank you.
I think the report does.
I think I'm done. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, well, most of the points I was going to bring up have largely been asked already. There was one question, though, that hadn't been covered, though it does tie into the bicycle and pedestrian comments that Mike made earlier. So on the final pages of the report, it's actually page 56, the conclusion that is drawn by TKM, I believe they are, TJKM, rolls right off the tongue. It talks about, on page 56, bicycle level of stress analysis and pedestrian level of stress analysis, and it does talk about some of that in the context of the scenarios. The way I read it, though, particularly the last sentence in the bicycle level, it says additionally, so it's been talking about the scenarios, and now it's saying additionally, nothing to do with the scenarios, at least that's how I'm interpreting. It is our recommendation to widen outside through lanes, provide striped parking and bike lanes within the project area, even if the project area doesn't change scenarios, especially on Fremont Avenue, Miramonte, to enable safer environment for bicyclists and create a system with majority L2S2 segments. And then it says, similarly to bicycles, the pedestrian level of stress was evaluated. It is our recommendation to update the state of facilities, add sidewalks and ADA compliant ramps, et cetera, et cetera. So those recommendations were really independent of scenario, if my reading was correct, which it may not be. And therefore, my feeling is that those were recommendations that should be done regardless of whether we're adopting a scenario or sticking with the current scenario, which is what is.
So, Madam Chair, is that a question or is that your comment?
I'm getting to my question, which is none of that is addressed in the, and maybe it doesn't belong in the resolution, but it's not been addressed, and to me it looks like, is that an oversight? I want to make sure it's not an oversight, because to me that sounds like it should happen regardless of what scenarios we're proposing. So how would we accommodate that? Should it be in the resolution? See, there's a question. Just be patient.
We didn't think so, and this is why. The city has a bike and pedestrian master plan, and it calls out for improving the bike facilities along Fremont and Miramonte and connecting those. So we're going to be achieving those improvements following the council's will anyway. So we saw those as independent. But that I think certainly we take caution if we do some of the improvements, the phase 2 circulation improvements, if we want to accept the degradation in level of service, we will need to tie some of the bike and pedestrian improvements with it to improve those.
So should that be a comment in the report of what you're saying is that the current something, because I feel the same way that Sally does, that the if it's in the current plan, then it should be called out in the specific plan that we're not going to address those things because they're already addressed somewhere else.
Right. We
So that-
recognize that this is an issue. It is being addressed by,
Our plan that's
yeah,
in.
and whether it goes to BPAC in order for
Okay.
them to make it whatever. But to me, that was a no-brainer, regardless of what solution. That had to happen. You highlighted it too. So we're all in agreement. Okay. So that's.
I was saving that for my comments.
Oh, okay. So I think then we're done with clarification.
Yes.
Okay, and so we are going to open up the long-awaited public comments. I know some of you have been practicing for 3 weeks. So I assume you've been timing yourself. You are getting 3 minutes, and I'm going to call you up. I'll have you primed so you know who's coming next, and then next after that. So it's going to start. We're going to start with Pete McSweeney, and everyone's getting the 3 minutes. I think I said that already. And then Tom Ferry, and then Andrew Pijak. So Pete.
Hello, Pete McSweeney. I'm a resident of Loyola, the unincorporated area. I'm also a member of the Board of Directors of San Antonio Hills that represents the 1,100 parcels that make up San Antonio Hills. So speaking as an individual, as a 50-year resident of the area and 50-year customer of Loyola Corners, I'd like to point out that I'm strongly in favor of maintaining Loyola Corners as it is. In fact, you're talking about 30 feet, 2 stories. I'd like to see 2 stories, 27 feet, which is identical to what we have across the way. And as far as A Street goes, I think it's ludicrous to substitute a right-hand turn and 2 lefts to replace the 1 right-hand turn to come off of Miramonte and cross the bridge. I won't steal Ted's thunder, but he's our expert on traffic and on people's wanting to maintain A Street as a 2-way street. So that, and like I said, 27 feet would be better. Thank you very much.
I had a question for you. So is your desire for A Street based on just your feelings or based on facts?
50 years of experience of knowing what's going on. I mean, I think the bridge solved 90% of our problems because of the way it is. But A Street, as I recall, when we were talking about this bridge, I think as it exists is less than the required right-of-way. I think you've got 4 more feet available there now than what is being used. So I don't think it would be any problem at all to leave it as it is. And
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, so Tom Ferry, followed by Andrew Pajak, and Greg Bunker will be next.
Hi, I've been waiting 3 weeks for this moment, so yes, but I have not been practicing for 3 weeks. My name is Tom Ferry, and I'm a resident of Los Altos, and I have a request about the number of units and its effect on heights, floors, and your traffic situation. I think we need clarification on how the state density bonus laws will affect the actual buildings in Loyola Corners, given the proposed 2-story, 30-foot, and additional 20 residential units. Without considering the density bonuses, we have no idea, actually, how many buildings we will get in Loyola Corners that will be more than 2 stories and more than 30 feet. The number of total residents is a key to figuring this out, because if you want, sometime I'll show you on a whiteboard the math, but it's the key variable in determining how many buildings will be above 30 feet and two stories. So I asked the commissioners to consider asking the staff to deliver a report which outlines the worst case scenarios in terms of number of buildings possible over 30 feet and 2 stories, given 20 or 15 or 10 additional units. I think we need to look at that. Otherwise, you have no idea what's going to happen in Loyola Corners. Without this information, we won't know how many buildings. Will we have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 buildings that are 40 or 50 feet in Loyola Corners? The 60-foot plus building planned at 4880, I think, is it up to 70 feet, I think now, has taught us the lesson that we need to have more diligence in this zoning and planning. And also, given all that, I'm not sure your traffic report is going to work. Thank you.
Thank you. So Andrew, followed by Greg Bunker, and then Ted Brown.
Good evening. I'm Andrew Pijak. I live in Loyola Corners on Dolores Avenue. So I'll echo kind of what Tom said, proposing 20 more units instead of the 8 under the existing plan really concerns me, and I'm urging you to amend that to either leave it at 8, particularly in view of the California density bonus law, how that could affect things. So, and also in view of the traffic problems, Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
We acknowledge that traffic is pretty bad. I don't see why we would consider pushing for more density in an area that already has bad traffic. Maybe we should be looking at ways to push it the other way, because that relates to safety, and more traffic is going to create problems, or is creating problems with bicycle safety and pedestrian safety. And so that's one point I wanted to bring up. And then my other point is once we nail down all these issues with the resolution and the retention of the original specific plan, I want to ask that somehow if the specifics plan's presence could be strengthened. It seems to me in the past, the plan exists, but I've seen developments proposed that almost categorically refute the specific plan. And it's almost as if the developer had never even seen it, or the architect had never even read it. And I want to request that, I don't know if we need to hand out more copies, or, do something to ensure that their architects have it pinned up on the wall right behind their computer. It seems like we're lacking in that area. And those are my 2 points. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Greg Bunker. It's going to be followed by Ted and then Teresa Morris.
Can I have 4 minutes?
3 is everyone's.
Got to ask. Good evening, Commissioners. Greg Bunker, 999 Fremont Avenue. I'm a 40-year property owner and business owner here in Los Altos. 4 years in the entitlement process for 999 Fremont Avenue. I provided you an appraisal this evening, very extensive one that I paid for. showing the project of Loyola Corners 999 Fremont Avenue if it was a 3-story. Actually, it was the one that I designed during the entitlement process. The appraiser determined that if you allow 3 stories in Loyola Corners, that you will typically, which this one shows, you will increase the value of the commercial property by over 1,000%. In other words, as my property exists presently with a small 1,000-square-foot building, if you then give it the design that David Cornfield recommended approval to the City Council, that it would be worth $10 million. So I think the 28 parcel owners in Loyola Corners that we've all been around for 40 years or so, that in the best interest and the highest best use is, of course, to zone the area 3 stories. We would obviously appreciate 30 feet, but we would prefer 35 feet. I believe I allowed to send you 100 emails and a petition that the Loyola Corners property owners would like to have 3 stories and 35 feet. If I'm asked to have a plaza on my site, which perhaps if that's not feasible, I'm not required, is it going to be 100 square feet or 150 square feet? I'm not sure. But I'm asking that all parcels along Fremont Avenue be 30 feet and 3 stories. And I believe that that's the best for everybody involved. I'll be, of course, designing a 2-story that I'll be bringing to you if that doesn't happen. And what else could I go over this evening? But the appraisal is very well written. It's 150 pages. I think it'll bring vitality to your community down there. I think it's necessary. It'll give you a village look. And that's the best thing that could happen there.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I still have 20 seconds left, I think.
I think that beeper is just the 30 seconds to go.
Yeah. So in any event,
it never beeps on anybody else.
Well, it's yellow. When it turns red, you can see it reflected in the glass.
Oh,
That's the key.
silly me! I wasn't looking out the door.
So can we give it back to 30
okay,
seconds?
yeah, sorry. Oop.
Hold on.
30 more seconds. Well, how can it?
Boom,
be
give
for
me a
him? It
minute.
didn't
There you
be
go.
for anybody.
No.
It'd never be.
We have to do everybody equitably. But you can go from there, and then we'll just when it
It's
hits 30
never done.
seconds.
all right.
It never
So,
beeps.
the way that Dave and the 4 architects designed my previous development, we had set the 3rd floor back. So in actuality, you wouldn't really see the 3rd floor. So it looked like a 2-story building, and it's just going to be a better look. And, when the push comes to shove, if you don't give the commercial property owners their 3 floors, you're probably never going to see anything. Thank you.
Well, all this time, I've never looked at the door to see how much time people had. That is a really good trick. It's reflecting. Sorry.
Probably couldn't see it from your former seat.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
I can see
You
it.
don't see it? Yeah, okay, sorry. We are amusing ourselves. So your timer hasn't started. You're Ted Brown, right? Okay,
Yes.
Ted it was be followed by Teresa Morris and then Debbie Skelton.
I'm Ted Brown. I live on Country Club Drive in the unincorporated part of Los Altos for about 50 years. I serve on the San Antonio Association Board of Directors, a homeowners group, and for many years I chaired the county's Roads Commission. I'm a one-issue person on this thing. I want to confine my concern to one thing, A Street. Keep it a two-way street. The 1,100 homes or so that are in the San Antonio Hills area, they're the unincorporated part of Los Altos and Los Altos Hills. We get in and out of our area basically through Loyola Corners and then on Magdalena. And making A Street a one-way street makes it very difficult to get whichever the non-one-way area is in and out of that unincorporated area. We asked for petitions from folks in our area. We've got, I can turn them over to the city council or David here, 262 people responded to them. They were all in favor except 2. There's a real concern about traffic getting through that area. And if traffic gets stuck in that area, people won't go there. The other thing is when you make it one way, you make some really bad intersections there that are going to be traffic problems, not only for cars and walking people, but kids on their bike. I strongly recommend A Street be a two-way street. Thank you.
I have a question for the speaker. And have you looked at the students that have to travel to block school and how they travel through A Street? Because right now they have to be integrated with the cars, and there's no room for bicyclists to ride on there.
Kids going to school through there, no matter which way you do it, whether you route them, well, there's a couple ways to route them. I'm not really sure which is the best way for kids. I know that when it becomes a one-way street, there's a corner down there that really is going to be a bad, much worse than it is today.
Okay.
If I was a parent, my kids, well, I'd escort them through there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. So Teresa is going to be followed by Debbie Skelton, and then the final speaker that I have a card for is Catherine Worsberg.
Good evening. Thank you for the chance to speak. Glad that we're first on the agenda. I appreciate the work that the staff has done. I have a couple points about height. One of the things that I recall is that we are supposed to be defining the specific and precise height within Loyola Corners. That's one of the things that staff was tasked with to do with this update. So currently it's 2 stories, 30 feet. I'm suggesting that we go with what the plan has, which is 2 stories written in there at least 5 times, 30 feet only written once. If you look at a 2-story building and you take the traditional 12-foot ceiling on the bottom floor, add 2 feet for your mechanical so on between floors, and then you have an 8-foot ceiling for the second floor and another 2 feet, you're at 24 feet. If you expand the second floor to 12 feet, you're at 28 feet. I'd like to see us define that, be very, very clear about it, and that, as Phoebe said, all of the mechanical is worked into the architectural. I'd like it spelled out very specifically so that people like Mr. Bunker do not have to wonder what is the final amount that they can go to, and we don't have any more lawsuits as a result of not being clear about that. So my recommendation is we go to 24 and make that the total amount, and if we can't do that, then 28, and that we stick to that. And we spell it out, because 5 times within the plan it says 2 stories, not 30 feet. The next thing is that we make sure that we say that's to the peak, and that we also, so that's basically my height spiel. The other is, I would like to see, if we're going to allow different businesses other than retail on the bottom, which is what's happening already, that we define what businesses cannot go in there. So what I would want to avoid is a whole bunch of massage parlors that might get a little bit tricky about what kind of massage parlor there is, or maybe smoke shops or that sort of thing. So I think it'd be nice if we were to clarify what was going to happen in that area and we keep it sort of friendly. This is a commercial neighborhood district also, which means that it needs to fit into the neighborhood. It's a commercial district within a neighborhood, so we have to protect the neighbors, which I'm one of, as I live on the other side of the bridge. The other is the traffic. Instead of trying to increase the traffic by putting more units in, so I agree that we need to bring the units down that were recommended. It's too many. I think we also need to define them. But instead of ignoring the fact that we're at an E level now, I'd like to see us get to a B level, and I think we could do that by doing traffic calming on Fremont, because it's horrible. It's a racetrack. I'd like to see us discourage traffic for going through it.
Thank you.
It's not over.
Teresa.
I'd like to see
Oh.
it. I'd like us see discourage the traffic even going through the area as a cut through to get past Foothill Expressway and then get back on it again, because that's not serving our residents or our businesses in any good way. And that's it. And I did it. Thanks.
Yes. So someone has said, why is this all of a sudden beeping with 30 seconds to go?
They redid the room.
It's part of the improvements.
It's the improvement. So I will learn.
But I have a
It's the timer that came with the new tables.
I have a question.
Yeah.
for
So
staff.
my apologies to anyone who I've sort of inadvertently tried to
I
cut
have
off.
a
Go ahead.
question for staff
Yeah,
that the last speaker brought up. Are massage parlors and smoke shops in our defined as acceptable uses in a commercial neighborhood district? Do we have limitations on the kinds of things we allow in our code by statute?
Personal services massage parlors are part of personal service. So
And smoke shops
and,
or
and
retail?
the massage parlors are licensed, and they go through our police department. There's background checks and all of that. A lot of communities don't do that, so we tend to have a different caliber of that type of use. The smoke shop is retail, but we have some provisions in other parts of our code that prohibit paraphernalia.
Oh, good.
So you couldn't really open what is commonly referred to as a smoke shop.
Thank you.
So I have kind of a similar question. Was the use permit then for the city, it applies to this area? We don't have to create a specific plan use permit. I guess does that make sense?
A use permit.
I mean, I'm sorry, not the permitted uses covers the entire city, including Loyola Corners, and we don't have a specific uses for a specific plan. Do you know what I mean?
We don't really. I mean, it relies on the commercial neighborhood zoning district.
Okay. Debbie Skelton, and then final speaker is Catherine Worsberg.
Hi, I'm Debbie Skelton. I live on Fremont Avenue, very close to Loyola Corners. I have 2 points to make today. The first is brief. I am concerned about the traffic report and the number of units, but I don't see any clarification in the proposal. You know, are we talking about 2-bedroom, 1-bath condos or 5-bedroom, 3-bath homes? Because I think this is going to make a difference, a huge difference, in terms of what Loyola Corners looks like and feels like, and also traffic contribution. So I'd like to see some clarification there, and of course I hope for smaller rather than bigger. Okay, the other thing I would like clarification on, and David, thank you for communicating with me, and I feel sort of stupid here, but I still don't get it. For the California Water Service site, I really don't understand what this means. And David wrote to me, the proposed policy would only allow a Cal Water to develop the site for its own purposes, their office building, and rework the courtyard, if necessary, as a quasi-public land use. What the proposed policy intends is to allow the specific quasi-public plan use for the water utility, and this is the difference, allowing... I just don't
Debbie,
get it. I've read this
bring
over
the
and over, and I've
computer
had
up.
a whole bunch of people read it, and I don't get it.
Bring the computer up and speak into the microphone, because no one watching on TV can hear you when you move away
All
from
right.
the mic.
So I basically, Land had sent a letter to David asking for clarification, and it is the first letter in this document.
Right.
So I didn't understand that, and I sent further questions, and then David replied, but I still don't get it. And I don't really understand what it is about this parcel, the item 6. I'm not for it or against it. I just don't get it, and I'd like to understand it because I am the resident on the other side of the creek. So it matters to me what this means, and I really would like to understand it. So, David, I appreciate your time, and I feel sort of silly, but I just don't get it.
So is what you don't get what the public I don't understand what she doesn't understand.
Yeah, right.
Well,
Okay, can I just read it? The timer's going to go off. But
Yeah.
if-
But
just
read it with your mouth against the or bring the mic over to you.
You can bring the
Okay,
mic with
is
you.
that okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Better? All right. Let me try this. Okay, so I asked him to clarify 2 points in that email that's in this booklet.
Yes.
So what the proposed policy would only allow a Cal Water to develop the site for its own purposes, their office building, and rework the courtyard if necessary as a quasi-public land use. What the proposed policy intends is to allow the specific quasi-public land use for the water utility. This is the difference, allowing the specific quasi-public land use of the property. If Cal Water does not wish to develop the site for their own purposes, then the idea is that the property would revert to the uses allowed by the underlying CN development regulations. And then the second question was clarified also by David. I'm now clarifying that the proposed policy will rely on the same CN regulations, including but not limited to setbacks, 2-story height, 30 feet, and buffering requirements, and not using the PCF regulations. I don't see any practical reason to actually change the zoning. The use permit provisions for the quasi-public land use allow the council more latitude in allowing the expansion of their use of the property. In addition to the general design review findings, the council is allowing a conditional use. A conditional use would need to make additional use permit findings. This gives the council more authority to impose appropriate conditions on land use. I hope this explains. And I read it over and over and over, and I asked other people to read it for me, and I don't get it.
Okay, so
Thanks.
can we just have David
So
answer the question?
Is the question about quasi-public land use? Is that what you're?
I don't understand any of it.
All right, so Dave, would
I'm
you
sorry,
explain
Yes.
how the property is zoned now and the implications of that, and what the change is that this resolution is proposing in a clarification so that we can see what, as Anita's often fond of pointing out, the difference between where we started and what's being proposed.
And while you're at it, can you say what a PCF regulation is? Because that one I missed too.
So the Cal Water property, the one that they own, the former Echo site and their courtyard on Miramonte, is zoned commercial neighborhood with the Loyola Corners overlay. So if Cal Water wanted to build their customer service center there, which is basically an office building, they could not do it under the present zoning because offices are not permitted at the ground floor. Okay. So our thought in developing this plan was to allow the office use, but only related to that Cal Water use as an entitlement for that property, as a way to try and keep them there. So what our policy would do is recognize that specific land use would be permitted with a conditional use permit if council wanted to support that. Otherwise, if they vacate, then it would go to the normal commercial restrictions.
With retail on the first floor
Retail on the
and
first floor.
offices or residential above.
Okay, that said, council has indicated that they want to entertain the idea of office uses in general on that, in the first floor, on that part of Loyola. So there still might be a way to get to the office building there, but still would not, their corporation yard is non-conforming. And so by creating the specific policy, we would bring that use into conformance and help facilitate it. That was our thinking.
And so when you say quasi-public land use, what does that mean?
That's just it's planners. What I'm trying to do is use the same language that's in our zoning code.
Okay, but what is that?
So quasi-public, Cal Water is a quasi-public
Because it's a utility.
Because
It's a regulated
it's
utility.
a
It
privately
has to do with
owned
the
public
building.
utility.
Gotcha. It
to
has
do
to do
with
with
the
the
user.
With the user, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Serves us.
Okay.
And what's PCF?
Public community facility, and that's a zoning district that is typically accompanying with a public and community facility land use.
But is that in our general plan?
It's both. We have a public and community facilities land use, and we also have zoning. It's called the same thing.
So I'd like to point out that reading the zoning code and even the building code is often challenging. And you shouldn't say that anybody feels stupid for not being able to read it because it's done in zoning ease and architect ease, and it was never designed for the ordinary citizen to be able to read it and understand it. On a certain level, you have to be trained. And so it was a very good question because it pointed out what the difference is between how the property is zoned now and what this resolution is proposing. And really, the essence of it is office on the ground floor.
Okay.
But
For
all the
this
other
circumstance.
requirements of height and parking and development floor area ratio, that's all the same.
Yeah, and we,
But setbacks could be adjusted based on what council wanted to do in terms of imposing those as part of the conditional use permit. I think I heard you say that.
Well, they can tweak it because a conditional use permit allows for modifications, but the
Right.
gross analysis is
Right.
in conformance with CN.
yeah.
So thank you, Debbie. And
Thank you.
Catherine has been waiting patiently. So Catherine, it's your turn.
Hi there, I'm Catherine Wurzburg. I live on Terrace Drive, and thank you for clarifying that because I had read that and I did not understand it at all. I'd like to start by thanking you for listening to the residents and the Loyola Corners business owners with the update of the specific plan, especially with preserving the plan's fundamental principles and the two-story limit. Historic Loyola Corners is unique among all the shopping districts in Los Altos. It's not a cohesive shopping center like Rancho or the one at El Camino and San Antonio Road. There are thriving businesses there that service the neighborhood in buildings owned by different landlords. And while the city council recommended that the city not explore methods to incentivize redevelopment, I hope that this does not mean that you are abandoning efforts to support the business owners with economic development. On January 29th, 2016, the city held a coffee chat at Tom's Depot with Loyola Corners business owners who shared ideas to refresh and update the area. To date, nothing has been done. So I'd like to ask, what is the status of implementing banners and updating the Welcome to Loyola Corners directories at the gas station and the clock tower building? The signs are outdated and the plastic is cracked. It's been 18 months since that coffee chat, and so I hope that the city will take care of this soon. In addition, I hope the city will support the merchants to organize the defunct Loyola Corners Merchant Association and encourage property owners to get together to coordinate paint and landscape so that the whole area looks better. Rather than destroying the prosperous businesses by building new buildings, the landlords need to update and refresh the existing buildings. And I think that would go a long way with landscaping to help reflect the vibrancy of the businesses. On another point, there should be a third star, and that is on Miramonte, turning right onto A Street. In the afternoon, that is backed up, and it is very, very difficult to get there. It's when the school's let out, and then with the end of the workday. So I think there should be a third PM star there. And on a final note, I did a quick perusal of the petition to allow 35 feet, three-story buildings, and it looks like more than half of them don't even live in Los Altos. So I hope that you do take that into consideration when you look at petitions. Thank you.
And you actually have 30 more seconds. I can see it in the door. No,
Come on. I have more time. Just thank you very much. And we really, as residents, appreciate you listening to the residents about the two-story limit. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And thank you for everyone's indulgence for us getting used to the new binging pattern. Okay, so with that, I have no further cards, so we're going to close public comment on that item and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Who would like to start?
I have a PowerPoint that I'd like to present.
You want to show
Go
us
for
a
it.
PowerPoint?
You want to plug it in?
Wow. All right, go right ahead.
Oops.
How long is this?
It's 5 slides.
Okay.
Brief.
Really brief.
All right.
It has to do with the first item that I have, and that's A Street. And I've been watching and looking at this area for quite some time, I would say a couple of years. And I'm very concerned about the bicyclists that have to travel on A Street. And I noticed that in the circulation report, that item 2, as was mentioned, they talk about how to make A Street better and how to improve the levels of service. And I heard that from a number of speakers about A Street and how much congestion there is, and specifically how to get people from the unincorporated area onto Miramani. So, uh-oh. So I'll keep talking. But what I'd like to talk about is that in page 6 of the circulation study, which is alternative 2.
Hold on.
Hold on.
Hold on.
Stand
That's all right.
to get to that.
That's just why I'm. And I know you guys can't see this from home, but they talk about how to figure A Street, and I actually would like to do a modification of this proposal.
Hang on, these pages aren't numbered.
No, actually it's page 6, but if you look at it's the second.
Figure 3, alternative
Figure 2.
2?
Figure 2.
I'm sorry, figure 3.
Figure
Alternative 2,
okay.
A Street
A
being one.
Street to one-way eastbound.
So is this the new computer system we can't plug stuff into?
You're clearly trying to contaminate the system with the virus.
Which figure again?
Wow.
This one, I think.
3.
Yeah, so figure 3. So what this says is that A Street, they show as 2 lanes. I'd like to make the recommendation that this be a 1-lane road, being 1 lane eastbound, and that they put it on both sides, as was recommended in the bicycle part of the circulation study, that there be a bike path on the left side and the right side, one going one way, one going the other way, but the one that's headed westbound have a divider of some sort so that the cars don't run over the bicyclists that are coming on board. And there are a number of areas in Santa Clara County that have such a thing. My concern is the parking lot behind Tom's Depot, because those people have to exit. But then maybe have a green stripe along the south side of that bike lane so that people know that there are bikes that are going to be on that.
Can I print these out for you?
Well, however you want to. I just want it's a series of slides that talk about A Street and how to direct traffic in that area. What it would work best.
So we have information before us, and you're making another proposal.
Correct.
One that's additional to the one that has been studied.
Well, and what staff hasn't said is about the circulation. I can talk through what the slides say if you want. If you give me the picture of a back to the original plan, maybe.
That's the computer done.
Oh.
Oops. Bye.
So I'll just keep talking through it. Okay. So what the slides were to show is that if you're coming from Fremont, what I would like to recommend is that there be a light put on at A Street and Miramani, and that light is to restrict traffic from traveling down Miramani to Fremont when there's cars already going through Fremont. So essentially you work as a roundabout through this area.
Oh, interesting.
So
It's
essentially,
around about the triangle.
exactly. So from Fremont Avenue, when the light is green to allow cars from Fremont to travel onto the other portion of Fremont, the light is red so that people going across the bridge can't get across it, and the light is red from A Street so that traffic coming through Fremont can go up Miramani and across Fremont without having to stop. Likewise, then, when the light turns red at Fremont, the traffic from Foothill Expressway comes across, and the lights don't change at the other 2 intersections. So that allows cars to get through this area quickly. What then happens is that the light on let's go from the bridge. So the light at the bridge turns green. But the lights from Fremont Avenue and the off ramp turn red, and the light it is allowed from Miramani turns green, and the light that I'm proposing turns green so that traffic can get through the bridge, across, and then onto Miramani without having to stop. and well as they can get onto Fremont Avenue, not having to stop. Oop, there was a flash. And then the last step phase is then to turn the light. Oh, that's the yeah. Got the camera working. Anyway, the light is to turn then red, and then the cars are allowed to come down at Fremont, turn right onto Fremont. I mean, go through Miramonte because that's a one-way street. Turn right on Fremont, and then turn left across the bridge, or turn left onto Fremont Avenue. And so by doing this, we allow traffic to flow much quicker than it is now. And none of the study says the reason I like one lane on A Street is to provide the bicyclists, which the report calls out, that they are able to travel that area safely. And where it widens at Miramonte, there actually be 2 lanes.
So in fact, it might be very helpful for City Council, since that acronym of whatever these people, 4 initial, didn't
TJ.
come up with an alternative for this. I think one of the reasons is because there's a cost associated with putting in another traffic signal. And I'm pretty sure that if Cedric was still working for the city, he could tell us. But I think it's a fairly pricey number.
I agree.
And David, do you happen to know offhand what the initial cost is for putting in a signalized intersection?
Especially one that's got to be coordinated with 2 other lights.
Well, it's a system, but let's take that as an...
Right, there is a cost, right? And
there's a real cost. On the other hand, it would be interesting for, after we had this huge study, the bottom line was don't do anything. And I found that a little ironic that we had this massive study with pages and pages of statistics, and the answer was if you do anything, you'll make it worse. This has the potential to make it better.
Well, and what the study said was that A Street one-way actually makes it better for the district. That's what the summary of the last page says. Either leave it the same, we get Class E, but we can actually if you make A Street one-way, it actually improves the level of service at that intersection.
But only if it meets the needs of the San Antonio Hills people coming down, because as we've discovered about traffic studies in general, often the solutions that the consultants come up with, in my opinion, are counterintuitive. And it's very hard for... Whoa!
We're done for the night.
I'm out of here. It's very hard for the public to understand because it is counterintuitive, but it might be interesting to get this to staff and have them, perhaps there is a way to get a coda to the traffic report that allows someone to, like our traffic. Do we have a traffic engineer yet?
No.
No.
Okay,
never mind.
So let me just back it up a minute. So we're tasked with 2 things tonight. We haven't touched yet on the negative declaration of environmental impact, and then the resolution wording. What you're proposing may well be the best thing in the candy store, but it's not at the same level of study as everything. So I think we need to figure out how that gets moved forward. It cannot, in my mind, it cannot take place of one of the options that we have seen and have been studied.
But all it is an enhancement on one of those issues.
But
we don't
there's
have an
a
analysis.
lot that goes into actually fleshing that out properly. So I think there's a place for that, but we have to figure out how it fits in the process. Maybe there's an addendum, a PS, City Council. Here's something that we recommend you pursue to this same level of detail of what we have in front of us, and that may be the best solution. The other option we could say is, oh, no, we're going to wait because we want to see that. I don't think that meets anybody's goals. There's a moratorium, et cetera. But I don't think right now we should spend the time talking about how much it costs to put a traffic signal, what this is, because we here tonight cannot flesh that out to the level it needs to be truly considered as an option.
No, all I wanted to do was to present as an option, as a
So, Anita,
possibility,
you have a thought.
I do have other things.
Already.
Oh, that's right, it expired already.
So I think that maybe we...
Can I finish my...
no.
I'm sorry.
Well, okay.
Because I have other comments to make.
Okay, so with
regarding
that context,
regarding the plan.
Yes, regarding the plan. Okay, so
And
with that context,
that was one. A Street and putting a light in wasn't considered. The other thing is that that there be a gathering space at B Street and Carib Lane. That be something that be thought of. About the original plan talks about having market or farmers markets and things like that. And it seems to me we should be really trying to focus some area that we can act as a gathering place. And B Street and Carob Lane kind of makes that, but nothing in the report says that. And the last thing that I have a criteria or a comment about is that rather than saying the number of units that can be added, it's actually the number of square feet for residential, because 20 feet could mean, 20 units could be anything from a 10,000 square foot.
One unit,
right? And I think what we're talking about is square feet for how much residential space there can be. And I know the original thing said 28 units, but I think it would be clearer, just like with stories being feet, it would be more clear. It would be a clarification as to how many square feet are you talking about that we're talking when we say 20 units. So does that make sense?
It makes sense, but what are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to provide for affordable housing, and that 20,000 or whatever amount of square feet should be divided up?
I'm just saying that when you say 20 units, I don't know how much.
It could be two 10,000 square foot units.
Yeah.
Is that what the city's goal is for this area?
Right.
And if we're looking at the hyperbole, if that's not the city goal, then there should be some definition that provides a developer enough information to know that if they come in with two 10,000 square foot units, they're not going to be positively accepted. Mm-hmm. That's an important piece.
Yeah, I kind of need to know what 20 units as far as how many is that? 3 bedrooms, 8 bedrooms, 1 bedroom. A unit.
Especially since we've specified other expandable square feet for every other use, practically speaking.
Yeah.
But looking at the resolution, which is what we're supposed to be looking at, these points, we have to see if there's, when we look at the resolution.
Room for it.
The places in the residential development, if what you're saying is this section needs to be modified so that in addition to saying whatever the number of additional dwelling units is that this commission can recommend to city council for adoption, that we can also say 20 units not to exceed a total of so many thousand square feet, and then the developer can choose to do what they want, or we can say a minimum unit size or whatever. But that's something for discussion, because going back to what our chair has said, this is what we're tasked to look at. And so that item needs some development. And before we even go there, I think that we could probably, if I'm correct, see if we could maybe get a motion to approve the negative deck if no one has a problem with it.
My only question would be if we're talking potentially about asking for an evaluation with respect to traffic. Traffic is a part of the CEQA analysis, so I don't know how we do a negative deck and then say, go look at this option.
You mean Mike's option?
Yeah.
Well, that's what my comment was that the traffic circulation that's listed here that they say will cease further implementation of what was in the plan, it doesn't really say what we're essentially doing nothing.
Right. Well,
the resolution says do nothing, basically.
Right. But it's 6.16. This is the transportation and traffic part of the negative deck.
I understand.
Yeah.
That I'm like, I don't know. That's a kosher.
But I'm, in my mind, Mike's option is a PS. And if you open that box that the PS is in, then you do have to look at it. So I absolutely agree with that. But I don't think that again, I'm holding that aside because we have a package here that's been thoroughly studied and vetted, and we can have our opinions on that. We can say, because again, I was actually going to go right where you went, which is looking at number 1, a negative declaration of environmental impact based on what has been evaluated and assessed right now. Can we agree on that?
Well, John had something he was going to say. I saw him take a breath.
I was just going to agree with you, Madam Chair, that if you want to make modifications to the specific plan, then we all of a sudden have an environmental study that doesn't sufficiently cover those amendments, those changes.
Oh, the pictures are up, Mike.
Oh, there you go. Oh. Do you want me to quickly go through?
No, not until we finish this
Okay.
part of the discussion.
We've got it for you guys, but not for the public.
Oh.
So, John, does that mean we should or we shouldn't?
That means if you want to recommend something like this to the council, it should be as an aside recommendation, not as part of the formal recommendations on the project, unless you feel so strongly that the specific plan recommendation to the council should include that. But again, we're lacking a whole lot of information to give to you, and who knows how long. I mean, it's taken us almost well over a year to get this circulation study done. We're looking at another long-term.
So Anita's point is
analysis.
a good one. We could, for example, approve the negative deck based on the information in the report
is
that has
what I
been
am
done.
proposing.
And then
Yes.
as a coda to City Council, we could say, but Commissioner McTighe had a brilliant idea that he would be glad to present to you as an option if you wanted to pursue it with an outside consultant, since we don't have a staff traffic engineer at this moment.
Well, and
then revise the
what I'd like
environmental
to, it's not my brilliant idea, but
No.
this.
I thought it was.
Well, then, thank you. But the conclusions that when I read this report were that there needs to be something done because we have a level of service E, but we're saying let's do nothing and let's leave the level of service E. But if you want to make it an aside thing, that we need to address this issue in the circulation plan, which they called out. I guess that's what I'm reacting to, because I read through this thing and looked at it in a lot of detail, and that's how I read it, was that they were recommending alternatives.
So then there's really two options. Either we say this is incomplete and hasn't addressed the issues that are there right now, and there's a proposal that needs to be brought up to the same level of study, and you have to wait for all of that to happen now. Or we can move this forward based on the current assessment and the input we'll give tonight and say, P.S., here's something that could solve those issues, and we think it merits discussion, but...
I can support the second.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah. Versus saying, wait,
Yeah.
right now,
'Cause
and
there-
studying...
The height and
Yes.
and the moratorium that's currently involved, I think needs to be.
Moratorium's finished. It's expired.
Is it
Yes.
expired? Okay.
Right.
But
Which
we
means
need to.
the old specific plan is in order
Right.
as it is.
Again.
Yes, in effect, right.
Okay.
So
with that, I move.
Yes.
Oh, no, not again. I move that we recommend the City Council adopt the negative declaration of environmental impact based on the documentation in our packet tonight. And then staff can inform City Council of an option that is not included, and if they choose to pursue it, there will be another environmental impact looking at.
Right.
So I move that.
All right.
I'll second that.
We have a second. Do we have discussion on that?
Yeah, I'm only concerned about one thing with respect to that, and that is the question over how many units do we really potentially have, and how big the units are, and how much the density bonus law might impact and therefore change the numbers. If it's 10% of 28 units, that's 3 units, that's no big deal. But if it's spread among multiple projects, the way that law reads is that every percentage, even if it's 0.1 or 0.05%, you get 1 extra unit. So if you have a bazillion small projects where 10% constitutes 0.1 unit, they still get to add a unit. You're potentially adding a whole lot more units than, quote, 10% or 15% or whatever it would happen to be.
Well, do you want to table this for a minute? Because I had some thoughts about the
Yeah, I had
residential
some,
aspect on this,
okay.
too. So maybe
All
we'll
right,
just
so
table
let's
this.
hold our motion,
Okay.
because I
Good
had
idea.
some thoughts about that, too. All right, we thought we'd get something
We were wrong.
accomplished, but we will, but together.
Eventually.
All right, so let's go back to discussion where we were. Do we want to,
So those were my comments,
Those were
was
your
about
comments. You did the-
A Street and the
Right.
gathering space and the units being in a square footage.
okay.
I passed.
Anita, do you want to continue then, since you were? No. No? Okay.
You go ahead.
No, I'll let you go. I have my notes all over here. I'm going to have to find them.
All right, I don't have that much, believe it or not. I did all mine at the front end, so
Okay.
that's all right. I'll
Okay,
go.
go ahead, good.
First, I have a quick question for David. David, are any of the sites within the plan area, are any of the parcels on the list in our housing element as underdeveloped or underutilized or potential for development for housing?
Like the map we have for El Camino,
I'm going to have
right?
to
Where he
take a
color
look.
coded the
Right,
high potential.
Well, no, there's actually a list in the housing element that says these parcels of
Oh,
these
okay,
addresses
okay.
have this potential, and it has what the current use is, and
Right.
I would have looked this up by myself, but I've been so bloody sick. Sorry.
But it would be good to have that.
Well, I just don't know. Maybe the answer is 0, in which
Yeah.
case, if none of them are listed, that's one thing.
I
But
don't think there are any, but I'll check right now.
okay, yeah, I suspect there aren't any.
Does that mean the public can see that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's up
There it is.
Then, with respect to, and I'm sorry, Mr. Bunker left, 999, John, you can probably answer this. I recall that in the plan it talks about the city purchasing that, and I think that's why there was a appraisal done. And it's one of the areas where potentially we're going to have conflict between what's in the original plan and then what's been suggested in the new language, which says, here's the zoning for it, and we'd love to also see a plaza. That's contradictory to the original plan, which basically says the city should buy this land and do X, Y, and Z with it.
I thought that was the point of the resolution.
It wouldn't be in conflict because what you'd be doing is updating the plan to reflect the language that's in the resolutions.
Okay, so what we'd be doing is saying we no longer think the city should attempt to buy the land. We should let the owner potentially develop it when he or she or whoever wants to do it in accordance with our.
If the city can acquire it at some point in the future, it can continue to try and do that or attempt to do that, but the owner still has the option of coming forward and proposing a project.
Okay, and my last question is on page 37 of the circulation report. It shows the number of daily trips and the rate of trips for multifamily units. And I recall asking when we looked at the project on Sherwood or Acacia recently, and said, gee, that seemed like a lot of units, and or a lot of trips, and it was 19 trips per unit. So if that's 19, and I asked specifically about it, and they said, yes, that's the normal amount, why all of a sudden are we at 6.65 trips per unit? And, it's kind of like, hello, I thought they all used the same book. Did I miss something?
Use the same book.
So what would you like staff to answer about that?
I would
Or
like to know
understand
if we
numbers, right?
really are using the same numbers in the same book
No,
or not,
it's not.
or if every
Right.
consultant
Yeah.
we have gets
Sounds
to
more
pick
good.
their own
Well,
numbers.
they're coming from the,
I'd have
they
to go
say
back
that
and look
their
at
source
that record on
is
page
from the Institute of Transportation
37.
Engineer, Trip
Trip
Generation
Generation
Manual,
Manual.
She's-
ninth
she's-
edition.
Right.
rate.
So
question
I don't
was
know
if
what the old one was.
Yeah.
The other one, but that's a big difference. 6.65 and 19 is, I can even do that math. That's more than a factor of 2.
Where are you
almost 3.
seeing 6.65, or did you calculate
here.
it?
Right
here.
Oh, there, okay.
Generated by multifamily.
No, I didn't have to calculate it. They gave it to us.
37.
And I don't recall.
So it's under daily trips.
Yeah.
Under
Okay, got it,
multifamily
got it,
units.
Sorry.
And all of this goes to the question of,
So,
well,
everyone's talking about what's on the thing, and
No, wait, please. Let's.
I was going to say either remove it or.
Yeah, let's.
no,
we're
go
not
on.
looking
No,
at it
don't
yet.
remove it. You'll never get it back.
No, leave it there. We're not going to talk about it right now.
Come back to.
So I guess the point might be that as we review different projects or areas, we're seeing different assumptions, which makes
Seeing
it difficult.
the use of different numbers to project traffic, and that's worrisome to me.
I hear.
But are you referring to the trip generation rate or the total trips that were being projected?
The
with last
ITE
project?
trip rates for dwelling unit for apartments. That's
Because this
sub-zero.
6.65 sounds about right for multifamily, because
Yeah.
single families around the range of 9, 10, 11. So
But I know that the project we looked at, and
In the
pardon me
Sherwood
if it was in the
Triangle.
Sherwood Triangle, it was 19, and I questioned it because that seemed insanely high. And I was reassured that that was the right number.
It's probably the aggregate trips.
That's what I'm wondering, if it was the aggregate of the trips.
You think it
and
was
not
an
the
aggregate?
rate per unit.
It was a per unit, because that was the data, and I was flabbergasted. Like, I've lived here a long time, and I don't think I've ever gone to and from my house 19 times in the same day. I mean, I drive a lot, but like that.
I'll have to look into that.
All right, so how can we get back on track here?
Point by point?
Yeah, so if you have, again, looking at the resolution, I mean, we have some questions that are obviously are not necessarily getting answered, but yes, thank you. If you would go through point by point.
Sure. I do want to get clarification on density bonus and the height allowances based on that. Can someone explain how that's going to work? So the
Not as
20
well as our city attorney did.
It's the same condition here
It's the
as
same
it
thing.
is in
Everywhere.
city.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yep.
The density bonus rules apply citywide, so if somebody were to propose making a certain percentage or a certain number of their of the units that they're entitled to, given the density of an area of their project, BMR units, then they get additional market rate units. In addition to those market rate units, they can request incentives and waivers. And regarding the height limit, what we're hoping people comply with is the list, or what we call the on-menu incentives that were part of the density bonus regulations that were forwarded on to the City Council, and they'll be taking a look at on Tuesday next week. The cap there was 11 feet, and that provides a little more direct explanation to applicants if they come forward and are asking, what can we ask for? What do you think would be successful? We can direct them in that direction. However, they still have the option of requesting off limits. So it could be 12 feet, 15 feet, we don't know, and they would have to show that that's necessary to accommodate the project, including all the units of the original project plus the market rate units.
But given how small these are smaller lots and much smaller developments, what would be the possibility of someone developing?
But that's not the issue here, because as we've learned on First Street, there are property owners who are aggregating parcels there. And so we can say that there are individual small parcels now, but I can pretty much guarantee that there's an aggregation that's going to be of significant size. And so that protection is not anything but transient.
So I mean, we're already saying, at least the proposal in front of us is 30 feet and 2 stories, which is consistent with the current plan. I mean, consider, it doesn't even make any sense to make it all then 1-story development, and you're still got, so what is this is analogous to, are we really going to back zone it to end up where we tried to start from? And that wasn't, necessarily, it wasn't what we ended up moving forward, though that wasn't unanimous. But, I mean, I don't see that 30 feet, 2 stories is, again, there was a suggestion that it could be 27 feet or whatever, but that general ballpark is, I think, where this has to be. It can't be less than that.
So the point to be made, I think, is you've got your finger on it, which is in the second page of the resolution where they talk about residential development. There's a big trap here. And the trap is, if you only have 8 remaining units, the likelihood of anybody being able to put together a parcel package that would allow them to add 11 feet in the on-menu bonuses, or how many feet they want to ask for in the off-menu choices, is very small. But the more units you allow in the residential development, the higher the possibility is of increasing the height above the 30 feet that was originally in the Loyola plant-specific plan and is now being looked at again. So really, this gets to a point where my comment is, what's the overarching goal for this area? And what's the problem that the specific plan was originally established to solve? And if City Council, it is a policy decision, because having housing is a slippery slope because of the density bonus law. So it's really a matter of where the City Council wants to make a stand relative to this particular area. And it has enough peculiarities in its general configuration that they could make a stand here that would protect this area. But my point, and has been on many different occasions on different areas, is what we're lacking is proactive planning for the development of any part of the city. And the issue from my perspective is there is once again a public bifurcation from the residents who like things the way they are and the business owners who feel that it should be developed. And what I read from City Council is they specifically said, do not incentivize redevelopment. So I infer from that that they do not want to allow significant redevelopment, because if they hold it at 30 feet and they limit the number of residential units to even less than what they've said here, then that will hold. And that is a purely political decision. And now I need to say, I think it's the wrong decision for the area. I know it's incredibly hard for the residents who are used to this, but when Safeway pulled out of that area, that commercial area really lost a lot of ability to sustain itself. And what we're coming to in different parts of the city and here too is that the retail market, the retail business model is in flux. And we can't stop what's happening with Amazon. And in fact, the only thing that my dog groomer said to me is, thank God Amazon can't groom dogs, because those small businesses will be sustained because there is no alternative. But the other kind of retail that we're used to having in a small town is not viable and is going to only get worse. And so from the perspective of a planner looking at this area and thinking, how can we make this work for the neighborhood? Well, clearly a shoe repair store would work because people need to repair shoes, but as we've learned in our town in general, feet on the street, there isn't the intensity of use that allows that to survive unless you charge an exorbitant amount to put a new heel on someone's pair of shoes. So I'm looking at the resolution, and if we are saying that we can look at the resolution and say, with some wordsmithing, integrate the rooftop mechanical equipment, the traffic circulation won't make any changes at all, even though we have 2 levels of E, and I can support the clarification of the California water surface and of the 999 Fremont property. I personally am uncomfortable with the residential piece because either you allow it, in which case the 30-foot level is not going to hold, or you don't allow increase in the number of residential units, and basically that area is going to die. So this is my opinion, and I'm voicing it. I could be wrong. I'm not prophetic, but that is my sense from an urban design point of view. And if I'm wrong, I would be glad to be corrected. But that's my problem with supporting the resolution. So City Council appears to have taken that mode, that they don't want to increase the development. If that's true, then when they look at this resolution, they should strike the residential development or bring it down to such a level, and that's the only mechanism that will work. And I just want to look, I had one more comment I want to make sure. What I really want to say is I love small commercial districts, but I understand and respect the fact that it's very hard to make it work, and I respect the property owners, which, as one of the public speakers pointed out, it's a patchwork of small properties. but that's not going to stay. It's going to be aggregated, and then it would be good if we had in place something proactive for when the larger parcel comes in. And that larger parcel can use the density bonus, and they'll wind up with a 50-foot mega building on Fremont, which is where the aggregation is going to happen. I'm finished.
Okay.
Did I go ahead? You-
Yeah, go right ahead. Go give us your points.
I have to agree with Phoebe on the point she made about, bringing vitality and interest into this area, both as an architect and as a nearby residence. I think we do need a lot more, or somewhat more density than there is now. It feels, like it's a dying neighborhood as it is. And I understand that, there's a lot of resistance, but I also talk to a lot of neighbors, and I don't hear that. I just don't see any of them here. I don't think, there's going to be any... it's going to be a lot of resistance to change the height to anything higher than 30 feet, but I would be okay with the density bonus if it ends up being that 1 or 2 units out of 10 makes it up on the third level if it's set back and if we control how it's done eventually. I'm in agreement with keeping it as is, knowing that it could be increased at one point or another.
So when you say as is, you mean the 30 feet, 2 stories?
Yeah. I also, I'm really sad to see that we, as a city, spend all this money on an economic study that to me had a lot of great ideas in it. Maybe not all of it, but quite a lot of it was really exciting. When I read it, I thought, wow, this is a place I want to come by with my children and enjoy. And finally, we're going to have a destination. There were farmer markets and things like that fit into that neighborhood, I thought, very well. But to put that aside, and now the traffic study, after all this time, we're putting that aside as well. It seems wrong that we spend all this money, we hire these consultants, and then we set that aside. So I just had to say that. So I'm in agreement with that, and I think. Are we going to make a?
Well, I think we each have to make.
One at a time.
We're going
Yes.
one at a time,
Okay.
and then we'll
Okay.
see where we
Okay.
stand. Mike, looking at the resolution specifically, do you have
I
any?
my issues are with the residential development and the traffic circulation.
We understand the traffic circulation. Then, so the residential development, you don't care for that definition because you'd rather the square.
Rather, I agree with what Phoebe's saying. I mean, I think we're allowing too many units to be designated when we're not trying to increase the height. I also have an issue with the thing that it says 2 stories everywhere, because I don't believe that we are, our planning guidelines have changed that to a number of feet, not the number of stories. And I
But
don't know
John
what
explained
stories.
that they're referring back to the original specific
I
plan,
understand
which
that.
was that
We-
predated
everything.
the form-based.
Yeah.
So that the thing on residential development is twofold from what you're saying. I just want to make sure I understand your point. One is the number of units potentially, and the other is clarifying how many square feet of development
We're allowing.
either per unit or in total or both.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Anita, regarding the
Okay,
resolution?
I'll jump on Mr. McTighe's bandwagon about the residential development. I think that we should be more definitive and either have fewer units and perhaps specify the maximum amount of square footage at something that makes some sense, because we really need to look here at total development. I do not believe that 20 additional units is going to make the difference between the retail services in that area or the personal services succeeding or not. And yet it has the potential to markedly change the character of the place. I've spent a lot of time in Saratoga. I think about Saratoga a lot when I go to Loyola Corners. And what I see in Saratoga, aside from a lot of restaurants, is that they've picked a height, and they said 26 feet, and that's at the peak. And you have to do everything within 26 feet. You can't have any of your mechanical above that. You can't do anything. And I'm concerned that we still haven't taken care of in the building height whether or not the developer potentially can invoke the exceptions that would allow parapets to add 8 to 12 more feet. And I think we should specifically exclude that here so we don't end up in that problem. And I would advocate saying building heights are limited to 30 feet at peak and no more than 2 stories. And then, go with that, because lots of places do both stories and feet. Mountain View, for heaven's sakes, all of their El Camino corridor, everything about it is specified in both stories and feet. And so, although I had the drill about form-based zoning, I just don't think we have to get hung up on it here. So that's my thing on building height. My thing on residential development, frankly, I'd go back to, for our purposes, 8 remaining units right now. And if council wants to change that, let them struggle with the density bonus issue, but I think it's the only way to get around the density bonus issue. I have a grammar issue under the policies for specific parcels involving SP3. It says now the SP3 site allows retail or restaurant uses on the ground floor and office/residential use on the second floor not to exceed 2 stories. I think you need either a comma or something after second floor, because otherwise the second floor is not to exceed 2 stories and 30 feet in height, and that doesn't make sense. So I think we need just a comma or something to make that less ambiguous. Should I put it that way? And I'm hopeful. I'm really, really hopeful that the community and the merchants, and by that I mean the people who run the businesses as well as the business, as well as the property owners, will take the opportunity once this is done to say, okay, we got it. We got whatever it is. This is it. Let's do what we can to refresh this area, because I think a lot can be done to help refresh the area without spending a whole bunch of money. The thing that concerns me is whether the city is going to do the things that the city said it would do, because I think it's kind of been used as an excuse to say, well, the city hasn't this and that. I am painfully aware of when Megan sat up here and said she wished when she'd first come on council that she had read this plan and she would have realized how much hadn't been done over all of that time. And I think we need to be partners with the business community in the broad sense as well as the residents in making that a place where the retail service model, Amazon's going to kill things, but it's not going to kill the dog groomers.
Exactly.
It's not going to kill the businesses that provide a special service, whether it's special knowledge or whatever. And I'll pick on our local hardware store in downtown. A lot of people go there instead of Home Depot because they can go in there and ask a question and get an answer and get the product they need. There's a value added to that retail, and it's those value added retail shops that I think are going to sustain this place. And we shouldn't just say, oh, retail is dying and so Loyola Corners is going to die too, because I don't believe that. I really don't believe that. So with those comments, I'm done.
Phoebe, have you touched on your specifics
I think
already?
I have. I'm just taking notes on everybody.
Yeah, right. Okay. And then, so I'm going to say, well, as a broader point, we talked about earlier that the resolution would just be pasted on front of the old plan. I understand that's probably a resource question, but really, the plan can be updated with. So that the plan is the new plan that reflects whatever resolution is adopted. And in fact, ideally, the beautification guidelines, the streetscape, whatever that document is called, that it should all be in one place. I don't understand. How are we supposed to ever know what anyone's can do and not do when there's all these different documents floating around? So, even if we have to outsource it, you give some person the 3 documents and say weave it into one, and then we review it. Anyway, that's a soapbox thing. Back to the resolution. I think on the first page of that, Phoebe already identified integrate the rooftop mechanical equipment architecturally, or whatever the wording is there. Our assignment when we got this, I feel, was a little different than usual. It's here's a plan. We've never done anything to implement it, like Anita was saying. And then after the study session, the council says, and we just want to tweak it. And even after the report came in, we don't really want to build this up, or we don't want to grow it. We just want to tweak it and make it current, I guess is what the assignment was. So given that was the assignment, I still think that, regardless of density bonus, and, we've been around it, and it's a different scenario on El Camino, but it's still, building heights were in the specific plan, and I would agree with recommending that they be 30 feet and 2 stories. I don't support, back zoning and everywhere. So I'm comfortable with that. Agree clarification around units or square footage or whatever could potentially be helpful. Though the smaller you make units, the more of them you get in one space, and then the more density bonus units you get. So,
and then you get traffic.
So, you get it coming or you get it going. But anyway, so if you want to recommend that they look at that more carefully, then that's fine. I do feel that 20 more units on top of the 8 that are still remaining, I feel like it was kind of pulled out of the air based on what the density is still low. I still think, going from 1 to 2 is pretty low in dwelling units per acre, albeit this is a different kind of space. So be it. On the SP3 photo drive up, I still don't. I mean, it's been improved here. It's encouraged that this project have a publicly accessible plaza, but I would just delete that whole thing. Why dictate for some arcane historic reason that this property, which was intended that the city would purchase, should therefore, because a developer owns it, have to have a public plaza? It's in a weird spot anyway, especially if we maintain the traffic in that way. I just think it's an unfair burden. I would delete that whole "it is strongly encouraged" sentence. And I think then that is my comments. So I'm not sure if from that we can actually map out a motion of what the resolution.
Want to go through this?
Well, I was going to ask staff, what do you guys want to do?
Oh, I thought that was the SP6. I thought the suggestions that they've made, particularly with the clarifications that we've talked about tonight, I thought it was probably fine, although I did feel that maybe the wording wasn't so clear. Does Cal Water, are they granted this use permit?
No,
by this, or they have to come. They have to come and ask. They have to come and ask for it. So that wasn't. Yeah. So maybe it should be clarified that the use can be requested or something. I wasn't sure from the way it was written. Yeah.
Well, if John wants to get a vote on this resolution, then we can go through the sections where there are discussion points, and we can say among us, is there a consensus for a modification in this section? And if so, what should the modification be? The one that I think is really up in the air in my mind is how many units. And we can approve the resolution by saying, and plus an unknown number of additional dwelling units to be determined by City Council, if that's what it takes. But it seemed to me that you said 8, and no one else did.
No one else put a number out there, because I don't know on what basis to put the number out.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know what basis 20 came from.
Out of the air.
Right. So
that's the one that I was looking to see if I could craft a motion.
Right.
And,
Well, let's see.
and the residential development, I do think that there was consensus about
Why don't we go
putting
through them and check?
Oh, good idea.
Why don't we just go through them?
Yes.
Okay,
All right.
go
so,
for it.
I think Phoebe had mentioned about a change to number 5 under
Yes.
administrative design guidelines.
Yes.
You should, Madam Chair, maybe you want to do this. I don't mean to usurp.
Oh,
your-
no, I'm happy to.
I think there's
your notes are
consensus,
probably-
and you all understand what Phoebe wanted to do under the design
Well, I
guidelines.
think
number
the
5?
intention
5,
was
right.
clear. I thought that maybe the wordsmithing would help it by staff to make sure that integrating was within the architecture, because otherwise what are you integrating it with?
Right.
And that the purpose is to conceal the mechanical equipment.
Right. Page 1, the number 5 at the bottom.
Right, number
Yes.
5 under
Mhm.
administrative design guidelines.
And how did you word it, Phoebe?
Well, I just told David that you would add the word with architecture, integrate the rooftop mechanical equipment within the architecture.
Okay.
And then they say, and avoid locating it. And I
Right,
think
right.
you could put an overall statement that said, the goal is to conceal the mechanical equipment without increasing the height of the building.
That would be a really good addition. And then in building height limited to 30 feet, would you guys be comfortable
Page
putting add?
2.
I'm sorry, page 2, number under building
building
height,
height.
saying 30 feet at peak.
Yes.
Happy.
I mean,
I
that, I
assume
think
that's what
that's
it
understood,
means.
because that's what the
Building
code
height
means.
definition.
But parapets are different.
But parapets are different, and if they
Mansard
do a
roofs are
sloping
different.
roof, which is what's called for
Mansard,
here,
yeah.
that roof under our other zoning code is measured at the midpoint,
Right.
blah, blah.
Well, and actually, I had a note here based upon what you had said, which is to make us, if we're interested as a consensus, to make an specific exclusion
Right.
of the code exceptions for parapets and elevator
Shafts.
shaft, it's towers, it's mechanical rooms.
Right.
So that the 30-foot at
Peak
peak
is
is
it.
in total.
Including everything.
Is there a consensus on that?
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in the residential development, in the building height department, we're saying the building heights are limited to 30 feet at the peak, and specifically excluding in the specific plan the zoning code section.
The height exception height exception
Not
under code, it's 14-120-66 or something like that.
It's the one
I'm
that
not
deals
gonna get
with
it right.
extra space for parapets or mechanical. Does not apply
They
in this.
cannot
case.
use
Does not apply.
that. Cannot be used.
So, one question about that, then aren't we incenting big blocks?
No, we have a sloped roof incentive.
No, we have a slope roof.
Roof incentive.
Yeah, sloped
Okay,
roof.
so,
Yep. Sloped
Okay.
roof. So we don't want,
There'd
we don't
be
want
no little-
400 Main
Right.
in downtown Loyola Corners, is
No.
basically what we're saying, which
Wow.
is 30 feet plus an 8-foot parapet on the top and a big
Because
block.
because the specific plan, as it says now, says architecturally, small-scale building things, slope
Yeah,
roof
got it.
forms.
Okay.
So
All right.
this
Right.
is
I'm on-
furthering
I'm
that
on.
goal.
Yep.
Okay.
okay.
And then under policies for specific parcels, you got my comma.
Yes.
You got anything else, Phoebe, before that? Or we okay?
And I recommended, though I don't know how anyone else feels, deleting that. It is strongly encouraged, blah, 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 about the
I agree.
accessible plaza.
I agree.
I agree.
I mean, for one thing, having sat out where outside the hotel on that quote
Oh, on
plaza where there's traffic, I cannot imagine trying to have a plaza there,
In that
given
little-
what the traffic is that goes zoom, zoom, zoom.
As a devil's advocate, I'd like to point out that I wasn't sure that plaza was the correct word, because the specific plan encourages and staff is supporting the continuation of the Fremont Arcade. And so I didn't know if the plaza was intended as a gesture towards the continuous arcade.
Of the arcade.
And so
That's a good question for David.
Because it's one thing to say we'll put something like the Hotel Plaza, which
No.
has its, I mean, I sit there, but it has its own issues. But here, we do have a street pattern, and this could continue it.
Yeah,
So-
that was, the idea was that there'd be a sense of arrival, so you would be attracted to go across A Street from Fremont. And
But that would mean also wanting to site it at that particular side of the property, so it couldn't be on the backside, because then it wouldn't accomplish its goal.
right, we're envisioning it at A Street and Fremont.
So,
where does that Fremont, the arcade, retain and provide covered arcade element along Fremont Avenue, isn't that property included in that? Wouldn't
Because it's
SP3?
999
Because it's
Fremont.
on Fremont.
Okay, so
So it's already there.
So we don't actually, if
We don't need-
this because the arcade
The
is
arcade
actually
thing
right
has
there.
to continue.
Yeah, so that's on Fremont, and
Okay.
therefore it's covered by the arcade
I'm persuaded
direction.
by that.
So-
All right, so we want to delete that sentence? Is that-
I can support
Okay.
taking out the strongly encouraged sentence. I want to go back up to residential development because
Yeah,
we
we
went
skipped
right,
that.
we
Oh,
went
how
right
did
by
we-
that.
That one.
Yeah,
It's my
those
fault.
three are
Wishful.
Well, so we
traffic
have
circulation.
two aspects to that. One is the number of units, and the other is a further definition of total square footage of residential development associated with the number of units. And if the number of units is in flux, then maybe we should have a per unit square footage maximum. Minimum, maximum, or range, whatever. So that's the point of discussion now. David, you have a funny wrinkle between your eyebrows. Are we creating an unintentional problem in the code by doing this? Or do you see
haven't
a,
done
do you
it
see a
anyway?
place where we should be careful, you and John?
I don't. I was just trying to follow.
Honest man.
Well, the theory was, if you said X units and you didn't set a limit, but we don't even have a residential square footage total limit. It simply says unit. Residential unit is the unit, when in fact every other development in this area is done in a square footage. So if you said you may add 20 units and we're assuming 1,500 square foot per unit, then the maximum you would be able to do would be 30,000 square foot of residential development.
Do you have any idea what the current, the development that happened since the plan was originally passed, the 12 that were built, are they in one or two developments? Do you remember? I'm
They're in
thinking of
two
one in
developments.
particular. It's two,
The one that hasn't been built yet on Miramonte,
right?
and then the one built right next to
Three.
Bank of America.
I'm seeing
Across from
three
Shell
on
Station.
there.
Kind of, sort of, maybe we have a resident who knows this
That's-
too.
I'm
What's
hearing
the
three.
range of size of the units? Does there somebody who has?
The 6 or 8 units that are on the Bank of America property are 2-bedroom units, and the 4 that were put on, not yet built, are 2, and one's a 3-bedroom, I think.
Yeah.
One of the things that I would just point out is the general plan, just in our housing element, talks about when we get any kind of housing project, doing a mix of units that are consistent with the community needs, whatever that happens to be. So we can dictate the sizes of units and the makeup of them as we get a project in. So if it was 2 5,000 square foot units, we might not think that's meeting the community needs.
But that gets to a point that Commissioner Bodnar brings up from time to time, and actually so does Commissioner Nander. It would be good to have, for someone reading the documents, not coming in to see the staff yet, but looking at the documents online, to be able to say, they might not guess the 2 5,000 units, 5,000 square foot units, because we have 2 very big units on the top of the building in the middle of the parking
Walgreens.
plaza
By
at
Walgreens.
Walgreens. There are 2 enormous units in there that met the letter of the code. So I'm wondering, in this particular case, because we're looking so carefully at this area, if we do want to enhance the general plan definition by saying, and we are looking at whatever square footage are. So,
Yeah, and to be consistent with how square footage has been designated for other uses.
yeah. So I hear what you're saying, and I think I would feel more comfortable if we had some definition that reflected the same limits and definitions that are in the other functions in this specific plan.
The thing is, this is so low density that it's really, I mean, we're already at what is it, one dwelling unit per acre? Is that?
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
issue I have with that is that's not the only use of that
Yes.
footprint. So I think that this density thing, if we calculate it
work
with,
in that
doesn't
way.
work in that
Yeah.
way. It's a false way of thinking of density.
Right.
It's deceptive.
Yes,
Deceptive.
thank you.
Okay.
I wasn't.
So we're struggling with what the better way to define that is, and we're not really coming up with it. So how do we so we certainly support, obviously, the current plan, there's 8 units remaining. Again, whatever a unit is, we've gone back and forth on that. Are we recommending then that we say to council, consider having additional units, but define, how are we going to define?
Or
it?
we
Do
could plug a number, and then they can adjust the number. I was just fooling with a number of up to 15 units and not more than, I think it's 220 or 225,000. No,
No,
22,000.
that's right.
22,500. So that's 1,500 square feet average per unit, which seems kind of, sort of, hand wave about
You can get
quite
3 bedrooms.
generous.
You can get 3 bedrooms.
You can do 3 bedrooms that. Maybe it should be less than
Well, but if that's-
22,000.
But if that's an average, you could have 2-bedroom units, you could have a studio, and you
Right.
can have 3-bedroom, because
Yeah.
at that point, it's up to the developer.
Yeah, and as David said, a mix that meets the
And the
community needs.
Right.
Exactly.
So I think it's reasonable, given what you both just said, if you put it all together, I'm comfortable.
So how many units was that?
I had up to 15 additional
Times
from
1,500.
from what's been approved,
maximum.
because we have to
We have
already have 20,
acknowledge.
right?
8?
We already
We
have
have 8
20.
more.
We already have 8, so we'd be adding 7.
Oh.
Because
you're saying-
add 7 more units.
add 7 more, so it's 15 total that can be built in addition to what's already been approved, right? Because you guys, in the 12 that have already been accounted for under the old plan includes both the B of A and also the as-yet unbuilt,
On Miramont.
correct? Okay.
So
I'd say
we
7 more.
could say residential development is limited to 22,500 square feet, and we can ignore the number of units.
Right. That's what I was.
That's where you started out before, and that makes, but doing the math from the bottom up makes it clear to, if staff was to explain to city council, because they didn't want to watch this whole meeting, how we came up with that number as opposed to saying 20 more units, that we are saying that they should be aware that there's a trap there, and that in order to avoid that trap, we are suggesting that the residential additional development be listed to so limited to, including the 8 units defined under the plan, a total of 22,500 square feet of residential development. Consensus?
When each investor comes in, how do they know how much of that?
Is left.
The city knows.
We have to track it.
Oh,
So you're saying of the existing plan, it allows 8 more units, you want to put a square footage cap on those?
No, we won't,
No.
we're not going to, we're going to withdraw a unit number.
And
from the
use a
plan.
square footage
Delete
total.
a unit number and replace it with
So 8
X
units
percentage.
plus.
No, what we're saying
forget
is-
the 8 units. Take away the 8 units and just say, based on what has been approved to date,
Yeah.
going forward,
The residential
build
development is limited to a total of 22,500 square feet of residential.
Including what's already been built.
What I was going to
No,
say,
no,
wait,
no.
David, you know how much has been built, right? Square feet,
we've got 12 units that have either been built or approved.
right? And so you know how much square feet
And you
that
have
is.
the ability to know how many square feet that is.
So add 22,500 to that number, and that's how much we're saying that the plan should address.
So if there's 8 units left and you want a 22,000.
No, it's not, don't think
Well,
about
let
the
it-
8
No,
units.
no,
No, the
He's trying
existing
to-
plan allows 8 units.
Right.
I understand
So
that.
we're saying,
We're
we're
not changing that.
superseding
Yes, we are
that.
changing that. We're
The resolution
superseding
is going to
that. We're throwing
supersede that.
out.
We're going to say,
Oh, I see.
there are units have been approved, and some have been built and some are pending, and they have a total square footage of X. And whatever the difference is between X and 22,500 square feet.
No.
No.
No,
Add
the 22,500 square feet is a total
additional.
additional
Additional.
above
been.
Whatever there
The
is now.
X square
Title.
feet that was already
What there
built.
is now is irrelevant, because you're just saying on top of that is
Yes,
22,500
square
square
feet.
feet.
Right, well, I'm just trying to help them.
That-
Be covered by the plan?
Well, actually, they're not.
This amount of
the
already
whole-
built and a
Someone can use
plate,
up
this
all of
amount of new, so a total max.
They can,
Right, but
but-
listen to what
They
Bahi is saying.
Bahi is-
Yes,
You're still
yes.
going to give a minimum and maximum, because someone can use up 10,000 on all this.
David's saying he controls that.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if that's a good idea or not.
Saying
Maybe
the
we should be more.
Well,
Well,
what
you
he's
guys
saying
are
is
saying-
there is a
We
control.
recommend-
You can
within
guide the
general
developer,
plan
David. I know
says
it.
that the number of units or the kinds of units has to reflect the community's needs.
Exactly.
I mean, city council could look at this resolution and say, and the average size of the unit shall be so many square feet. That's up to them, but I think the total development is the cap that addresses
Right.
council's concern and the neighborhood's concern about the overall height of that area remaining at the 30 feet.
So and then still the density bonus is based on the number of units.
Units.
Okay.
Right.
So would people be encouraged to make much smaller? Oh, sorry. Would that mean that we're encouraging smaller units?
Well, under the current law,
Yep.
if you have 4 or fewer units, you're not required
Right.
to do anything. So the question, I think, would be whether there'd be space within the additional cap of 22,500 for a large aggregation
Additional.
to, do mischief in terms of getting around the 30 feet.
Mhm.
And I think we've constrained it so that it's unlikely. We may not have
Right.
closed off entirely, but I think we've made it pretty unlikely.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, David, so are you okay on that one?
Got it.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
The only
You see
potential
something, yeah.
concern that I see is that if you have this 22,500 square feet of area, somebody decides, I really want to take advantage of the density bonus regulations, and they do build very small units in order to increase the number of units of the project, and then make a certain percentage of those affordable units to get additional units.
Right.
All of a sudden, you've got a lot of potentially extra
Little
units. Where are you going to put those units? You may be squeezing those up.
So maybe that's the point, that there should be a minimum size.
Yeah.
And that would basically close, I feel like we're closing all these loopholes. and Someone's going to come
But that's
up with
what we're
another
doing,
one.
is we're closing loopholes until this California legislature decides to throw all of this out the window and say they can build whatever they
Don't hold
want.
your breath on that one.
No, it's going to happen.
So maybe the thing to do is to say with a minimum unit size to be established by city council, and we suggest that it be 1,200 or 1,500 square feet. And
I
that
would-
would,
Well,
Minimum size?
No, because 1,500 was the average we're aiming
Yeah,
for. So
I'd
that
go-
would be the
1,200
minimum.
is-
but if you
Two-bedroom.
say you can do a 1,000 square foot unit or a 900 square foot unit, then you're into the trap that John is talking about.
A lot of little ones.
A lot of
Which-
little
I think
ones.
this
A lot of little
requires
ones would
a
serve a
little more
different
study. I don't
community.
think this is a decision.
But does that,
Yeah,
end
we
up, if you have a lot of little ones, wouldn't you guys say that doesn't meet the community's,
We need affordable housing, and if they're proposing
Yeah,
a lot of
that's-
affordable
that's
housing
the
units
thing.
and it's going towards those RENA numbers,
Yeah, I know.
all of a sudden, that's certainly, I would make an argument all day long that that's meeting the needs of the community.
right.
Which
But
is
if,
why I was
but if
saying
that's the
larger.
case, then some of those parcels ought to be on our housing inventory list, and if they're not, then I think you argue that this is not an area for that kind of
Can we
housing.
refer this to
And
further
they are
study?
not.
They are not.
Or-
There is
we could
nothing
say-
on the
Just
list.
say-
Wait, let's have
Okay.
one conversation. I wanted to hear what they were saying, and I couldn't.
David, can you explain again?
Oh, I just was answering Commissioner Ennender's question about, are there any sites in Loyola Corners that are in the housing element as underdeveloped or vacant? And they are not.
Okay.
We've not identified any sites in Loyola.
So then what we could say is we could say that 22,500 square feet with a suggestion to council that they establish a minimum size unit and the staff can explain to them why there's a need to do that, so that John can talk about if they made a bunch of micro units, how that would allow the density bonus to kick in and might not meet the community's needs, except since we're supposed to do affordable housing, it would, and so having a minimum size unit precludes that.
Gives John more work.
He likes work. So I think we've gone through all of the items.
Well, the retail and other use, but traffic circulation?
Well,
so.
Or wait, are we talking about residential development that we've gone through?
I think we've gone through everything on residential development.
Okay.
Then the traffic circulation.
So wait, retail and other uses is the other thing right between those two? Are we all in agree?
I am.
Yeah, I'm
I
okay
didn't
with
have any
that.
notes. Yeah.
Traffic
Right.
circulation.
So traffic circulation, what I thought we had talked about
Yes,
is
earlier.
that we can support this based on the documents that there, but there has to be a supplemental
PS.
advice from us to council that there is an alternative that wasn't looked at, that it hasn't been evaluated, and they may want to do that.
Well, I would like to just say that the traffic circulation study recommended an alternative that isn't even listed here. So that's where I would start, because all I'm doing is taking what they've said and enhancing it.
But it's not the same as what was reviewed.
That's right.
It's not exactly the same because they didn't talk about a light.
That's my
Right.
point.
Right.
Yeah, so.
It's a big
So
difference.
I just want to, but I want to make sure that what we mention is that the traffic circulation alternative 2, which says things get better, especially for bicycle and pedestrians, if you do those modifications, which is in the conclusion, should be at least referenced in this.
Well, so this is a supplementary document. It can say that. It can say what we had talked about earlier, and you pointed out, Sally, that everybody said this last thing that said, and you should do these things, should be done a priori.
That's,
So
and
that's the second.
that's even another
Well, those
point.
two
Yeah, that's
pieces
two
in the-
pieces. Right.
On the outside.
Yeah,
of this
there should be a supplement, so we need essentially a motion, eventually it's going to approve this, but then another one that adds a supplementary
Caveats.
document with a
Caveats.
couple of caveats and
Yes.
recommendations.
Yes. Okay. All right. So with that, then, have we done all the wordsmithing on the resolution in front of us?
Well, the only comment I have is about the California Water Service site.
Uh-huh.
And if we're wordsmithing, it's just that it says in here, will and will and will.
Oh,
and,
yes.
And,
Well,
and can we just cross all that out?
I think we need to ask staff if that is convention for phraseology, even though the English grammar
Or
may
should it
not
be
strike
would?
you.
Well,
but
actually,
it may
this
be-
allows, I mean, I would just
It may
make
be
it
a,
present
it may
tense.
be a zoning code convention,
Does that make sense, David?
a convention of language.
Or maybe it should be the conditional would, since it's conditional on the use permit.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I'm not the expert here.
I'm not either. I'm
I'm
just-
only the English major.
I'm just looking at it going, I'm trying to make it more active and.
Are you following us, David? I can't blame you if you're not, but.
Yeah, you want to see the verb tense in that made in a more active.
Right, and then the last part, the last red part you have is should the California Water Service not use the site, then allowable uses revert to commercial neighborhood district and any modifications by the specific plan, not a as may be, but it reverts to, I was going to use the word any modifications.
And where, I'm.
But the last-
Very end.
Yeah, right, and I was jumping,
But that's all part of SP6.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you need the word and or not. I don't know.
We're having fun here, guys.
That's
This-
the lawyers.
We're
Yes.
definitely
If
getting
the
into
lawyers
that.
say that, then I don't think it's a problem.
Uses to revert to the commercial neighborhood district and by this, and the.
And any
specific-
modifications.
And the specific plan, that's all you
Sure.
need to say.
Sure.
Because the specific plan actually takes precedence, my understanding, over
Right.
the zoning code, right?
Exactly.
Yep. You got that?
And this specific plan.
Yeah.
Actually, that's even cleaner.
Yeah.
And then there was my point, and I'm not sure this is the best way to, but the up in the red area above that, as a conditional use subject to the zoning, it's really as a, I mean, I wanted to somewhere explicitly say that they have to request the use permit. Remember, I
Right.
feel like it sounds like it's granted rather than
Right.
they're requesting it. So I'm not making a proposal is how it should say, because I'm not thinking straight right now, but
We got it.
you've got it. Okay, good. All right, so we have those tweaks to the resolution, and in light of that resolution, I think we're aligned now. We've gone through the...
Right, but I think that what we have is a tabled motion with respect to the negative deck.
Which is where exactly
Which is
I
what
was
we
going to
should
bring
go,
us
yeah.
back to, based on the resolution then we just discussed. So in the context of that, we have a tabled motion to approve the negative declaration of environmental impact. And can we actually just go ahead and vote on that then? Okay, so all those in favor of the negative declaration?
Aye.
And none opposed? Okay, so all five of us support A. And then regarding number two, not A, one. Number two, a resolution amending the Loyola Corner specific plan. We've just gone through. Do I have a motion for that resolution?
I'll move that we approve a resolution amending the Loyola Corner specific plan with the changes that we've just discussed.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Okay, do we have any further discussion?
Question is, do we want to see it?
I trust them.
Okay, then it's just an open question. In that case, I'm ready to vote.
Okay, all those in favor of the resolution as amended?
Aye.
Aye. We're unanimous on that, so 5. Yeah, so are you comfortable with the no, we don't need to see it? Because, okay. So now let's talk about our caveats. I think there's...
Well, let's talk about a new motion.
Yes.
We have a second motion for City Council that
Okay.
we move that in addition to the resolution, number 2017, whatever the revised number will be, that there are additional points that we think are important for City Council to consider. And one of them, this is the easy one, is that one where...
Page 56.
I believe that's where it is.
Yes.
On page 56 of the TGKM bicycle level of stress analysis, that the recommendation to widen outside through lanes and provide striped parking and bike lanes within the project area, especially on Fremont and Miramonte Avenues, to enable a safer environment for bicyclists and create a system with a majority of level of traffic service, level of stress, LTS, 2 segments, should be part of the work in the Loyola Corner specific plan upgrade.
And similarly, the last question in the following one, the pedestrian level, it is our recommendation to update the state of facilities at sidewalks and ADA compliant ramps at locations where they are absent to create a continuity for pedestrians using the system.
So I think what we would want to say is that there were 2 elements of the TJKM report that we believe need attention and implementation.
Independent of the scenario.
Independent of
anything
else.
Yes.
And that it's these 2 things.
Good.
So that's first point.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, the second point is about
Alternative 2.
alternative
2, and that could be modified by putting a light at that intersect. Do you want me to go through this PowerPoint?
Well, I think the concept is alternative 2 could be modified by the use of signalization to improve the traffic circulation, but it would require additional study by an outside consultant before it could be truly evaluated, which is why it wasn't included in the resolution.
And would potentially impact the
And it would
environmental analysis.
Yes.
Exactly.
And is there a third one, or are we done?
I feel like that was it.
That's it.
Wasn't that it?
I so move.
Okay, so we have a motion for 2 points to consider to move forward to council. Do I have a second for that motion?
I second the motion.
Okay, do we have further discussion
Well,
on
I
the
have
motion?
a question, and that is that along Fremont Street, I was looking at that segment between A Street and Miramonte, that it be a left turn lane to go onto the bridge, and on the left side and the right side be a 1-lane road. And then as it progresses down that street, it becomes a 1-lane road. I don't know why there's 2 lanes up and down that Fremont Street itself, because cars are in 1 lane, essentially getting onto the freeway expressway until the very, I mean, at the end, then there's splits, right? To go to the side
Either
road
to
or
the
to go
right
to
or
the
the
freeway,
left.
right? But it seems to me that by moving traffic into one lane, you're actually creating it safer for bicyclists as well as parking cars and things like that. And I don't know whether that should be as part of this motion, or I don't know how that gets addressed.
I wonder if we could refer council
To you.
to you.
That's a splendid idea.
Seriously,
Yes.
because
No,
you
right.
have the PowerPoint,
Yeah.
and you have
Or-
given it to staff, and they can either pull it together
So
for their
should we
report
amend
or
the
what-
motion to recommend that Commissioner McTighe present the modifications that he's briefly reviewed with us?
Sure.
Right.
for the idea that city council can decide if they want to consider it.
Okay.
All righty.
Did you accept that modification to your
Yes, I
motion?
do.
Okay.
All right, so we have an amended motion, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we're all in agreement on that. So we have your negative declaration of environmental impact, a resolution, and some points to consider to take forward. So I think we have finished
We
that
have
item.
fulfilled our mandate.
Yes, we have fulfilled that mandate, so we're ending that item, and we will move on to commissioner reports and comments.
I have a question for staff.
Before we get there?
Well, no, it's part of my comments.
Part of your comments.
Because I've been reading a lot in the paper about other cities dealing with medical or marijuana dispensaries, and I don't know if our use permit allows it, doesn't allow it.
I think it doesn't, right?
I think
It's not
these-
permitted in the community.
It's not permitted, just point blank.
The commercial sales is not.
Okay.
Even
But-
medical,
Know
I
about
mean.
cultivation.
Well, I know that because of the marijuana law changing in the state of California, all cities seem to be talking about what do we do and not do and where we do it, and I don't know if that's something we want to address at some point, or that's something we just leave alone, it's already addressed.
I thought it
Is
was
that a-
addressed
I
last
thought
year.
it was addressed, yeah. Dave.
Okay.
Came before us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
So
just-
council already.
I'm just, well,
Yeah,
I just,
yeah.
like I
No.
said, it was a question because I've been reading a lot about.
Right, okay. Understood, but we feel that's been addressed, okay? Any?
Do we want to call Commissioner Bogner back if she's?
Oh, right. Commissioner
back.
Bodnar, if you're.
She might be gone, though.
Not going to stay.
I would hope she.
Oh, I thought she said she was going back there.
No, she said she
For a
was no
short
back for
while.
a part of it. and then she was
Oh,
gonna go.
okay. Yeah, because she would have then heard that we finished that. All right, so do
Who
we
was at
have?
the
I
last
have council meeting, and there were a number of interesting things that happened. They adopted the ordinance that will prohibit smoking on the Civic Center campus altogether. They approved, and I don't remember this coming before us, at least during my tenure, so maybe it just doesn't do that, but to vacate a right-of-way on a residential parcel. And although it was approved, they did ask staff to look at the policy and procedure for doing that and whether compensation should be part of the package if the city's going to vacate part of its.
They want
Less-
money for it?
Where's
Yeah.
the right of way? Is that behind
It was on Van Buren.
Egan?
It's behind Egan, it's on Van Buren.
Yeah, that's, well, never mind.
Anyway, let's see. They approved the Lark Ellen on first reading of Lark Ellen overlay that we had handled, and they approved the professional services agreement for the architectural firm having to do with Hillview. And Alex isn't here. I specifically made note that it was from design through construction oversight to closure. I figured he would know what all that meant. They postponed, continued until September 26th, the elevator tower height waiver issue for 4880 because their attorney was not available. And they gave lots and lots and lots of feedback on the scenarios to be used in the downtown visioning process. And those were the biggies. It was a busy meeting.
I'll be at next week's, which will be. CT
So-
zone.
Where they'll be doing CT and density bonus. Yeah,
Well, and they're going to be taking away the transportation name
Yes.
from our commission
our
and giving it to BPAC. My only comment is BPAC was created because there was a traffic commission, and there were certain things that were able to be done because we had a BPAC for Safer Streets, that if they change the name back to traffic, does that eliminate, and I don't know.
Call it transportation, I think.
Transportation, I'm sorry.
Right.
The Transportation Commission, does that take away all the things that we got because we had a BPAC commission? And Will would know because he's the one that argued for all this, and he's the chair of BPAC.
Well, that discussion will happen on Tuesday's meeting as well. So
I'm just
yeah.
commenting with staff.
Right.
Be prepared.
Right.
Well, just at least to know what the impact is. I don't think most people know that.
That the BPAC designation came with benefits that might be lost.
Yes,
Right.
that's what I'm concerned about.
So speed limits would no longer come before you.
Right. And the other question I have is, so the element of traffic circulation at Loyola Corners, would we not see that?
Oh, no, you'd still see that.
We'd still see that, regardless of whatever our name was.
Right.
It's not the name, it's the responsibilities. Yeah.
It falls to you to make.
Okay.
Okay, so do we have any potential future agenda items then, or we've basically just kind of had our full discussion, in which case then I think we are adjourned.